Bien. La 5e séance plénière de la
The
conférence
fifth plenary meeting
internationale
of the
de haut niveau
high-level
pour
international
le règlement
conference
pacifique
for
de la
the
question de
peaceful settlement
Palestine
of the question of
et la mise en
Palestine
œuvre de la
and the
solution des deux
implementation
États
of the
reprend.
two-state solution is resumed.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen,
Mesdames et messieurs les chefs d'État et de
distinguished
gouvernement,
heads of state and
Mesdames
government,
et messieurs les ministres,
ministers,
Excellences Monsieur Antonio Guterres,
Your Excellency Antonio
Secrétaire
Guterres,
général de
Secretary
l'Organisation des
General
Nations Unies,
of the United Nations
Excellences
Organization,
Madame Annalena Baerbock,
Your
Madame la
Excellency
Présidente
Annalena
de
Baerbock,
l'Assemblée
President
Générale,
of the General Assembly,
Excellences, Mesdames et
Excellencies,
messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen,
c'est un honneur
it
et un
is an
privilège
honor and a
pour
privilege
moi de
for me
coprésider
to
avec le
co-chair
Royaume d'Arabie
alongside
Saoudite
the Kingdom of Saudi
la
Arabia
présente conférence
this conference
conformément
in
à la résolution
accordance with
79
General
81
Assembly
de
Resolution
l'Assemblée générale du 3 décembre
79/81
2024.
dated 3rd December
Nous vous souhaitons
2024.
à toutes et à tous
We wish
la bienvenue.
to extend a warm welcome to
Permettez-moi à
each
présent
and
de
every
faire
one of you.
quelques
Allow me now
observations
to
liminaires.
deliver some opening remarks.
Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée générale,
President
Monsieur le
of the
Secrétaire
General
général,
Assembly, Secretary General,
Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement,
Heads of
Mesdames et
State and
Messieurs,
Government, ladies and gentlemen,
nous sommes là car le
we've
temps est
gathered
venu.
here because the time has come.
Le temps est venu
The
de
time
libérer
has
les
come
48
to
otages
free
détenus
the
par le
48
Hamas.
hostages detained by
Le temps
Hamas.
est venu
The
d'arrêter
time
la
has
guerre,
come
les
to stop
bombardements à
war,
Gaza,
the bombing
les
in Gaza,
massacres et les
the
populations en
massacres
fuite.
and the
Le
fleeing
temps est
people.
venu car
The
l'urgence
time
est
has
partout.
come because there's a
Le temps de la
pressing
paix est
urgency
venu.
everywhere.
Car nous
The time for
sommes
peace
à
has come.
quelques instants
Because we're just a
de ne plus
few
pouvoir la
moments
saisir.
away from no longer being able to
C'est
seize
pour cela
peace. This is
que nous
why
nous retrouvons
we have
aujourd'hui.
gathered here today.
Certains diront trop tard,
Some might say it's too
d'autres
late.
diront trop tôt.
Others might say it's too early.
Une chose est sûre,
But one thing is
nous ne
certain.
pouvons plus attendre.
We can no longer wait.
En 1947,
In
cette
1947,
assemblée décidait
this
du partage de
assembly
la Palestine mandataire entre deux États,
Decided on
l'un
the
juif et l'autre
splitting
arabe,
of mandatory
et
Palestine across two
reconnaissait
states,
ainsi le
a
droit
Jewish
de
state and an
chacun
Arab
à
state, thus
l'autodétermination.
recognizing the right of each of them to
La communauté
self-determination. The
internationale
international community
consacrait là l'État d'Israël,
granted
accomplissant le
to the
destin de
state
ce
of
peuple, enfin,
Israel
après des
at last
millénaires d'errance et
fulfilling
de
the
persécution,
destiny of
et qui
this
put
people
fonder là
after
une si belle
millennia
démocratie.
of roaming and persecution,
La promesse
and
d'un État
Israel
arabe,
founded a
elle,
beautiful democracy
reste
there.
jusqu'à
The
ce
promise
jour
of an Arab state to
inachevée.
date remains unfulfilled.
Depuis lors, c'est un long chemin
then,
d'espérance et de désespoir mêlés.
There's been a long path
Israéliens
of
et
hope
Palestiniens
and
ont parcouru
despair
chacun à leur
intertwined,
manière.
which Israelis and Palestinians have gone
Nous
down,
avons
each in
cheminé
their own
avec
way.
eux,
We
chacun
have
d'entre nous
walked
selon son
alongside
histoire
them,
et
each
selon
of
sa
us in
sensibilité.
keeping with our
Mais
history
la
and our
vérité
sensibilities.
est que nous
But the
portons la
truth is that
responsabilité collective
we bear a
d'avoir
collective
failli
responsibility
jusqu'ici à bâtir une paix juste et durable
for, to
au
date,
Proche-Orient.
having failed to
C'est
build
l'évidence
just and
même qui
lasting
s'est
peace
imposée à
in
nous le
the
7 octobre
Middle East.
2023,
This is what became
lorsque le peuple
evident
israélien a subi
to
la
us on the
pire
7th of
attaque
October
terroriste de
2023,
son
when the
histoire.
Israeli people suffered the worst terrorist
1224
attack in its
hommes,
history.
femmes et enfants
1,224 men, women, and children
4834
killed,
hommes, femmes et enfants
4,834 men, women, and children
251
injured,
hommes, femmes et enfants enlevés.
251 men, women, and
La barbarie du
children
Hamas et de
taken
ceux qui ont
hostage.
collaboré à ce massacre a
The cruelty
stupéfié
of Hamas
Israël et le
and
monde.
all those who collaborated in this
Le 7
massacre
le 7 octobre
dumbfounded Israel
est une
and astounded the
blessure
world.
encore vive
The 7th
pour
of
l'âme
October
israélienne
remains an
comme pour la
open
conscience
wound
universelle.
for
Nous la
the
condamnons sans
Israeli
aucune
soul
nuance,
and
car
for
rien,
our universal
jamais,
conscience. We
nulle part,
condemn it
ne peut
unequivocally because
justifier de recourir au
nothing,
terrorisme.
never, nowhere can
Nous
justify
pensons
having
en
recourse
ce
to
jour aux
terrorism.
victimes et à leurs familles.
Minds go out
Nous
and
disons
hearts go
notre
out to the
compassion aux
victims and their
Israéliens et
families.
exigeons avant
We've
toute autre
expressed our
chose que tous
compassion
les otages
to
encore
all
détenus
Israelis
par le Hamas
and
soient
first and
libérés
foremost
sans aucune
demand for
condition.
all hostages still held by
Nous, Français,
Hamas to be
avons rendu
freed
un hommage
unconditionally.
national à nos 51 compatriotes assassinés ce jour-là
The French
et à toutes les
paid
victimes du
tribute
7 octobre
to the
2023.
51 French men and women assassinated on
oublierons
that
pas.
day and all other victims
Jamais. Comme
of
jamais, nous ne
October
cesserons
7th.
le
We will never
combat
forget them.
existentiel
Never.
contre l'antisémitisme.
just like we will never stop
Français,
the existential fight
nous
against
savons la morsure du
anti-Semitism.
terrorisme. Nous
The French
portons
people
au cœur
know
le
the sting
souvenir
of
du
terrorism,
témoignage de fraternité
and our
offert
hearts
après les
remember
attentats commis à
the
Paris le
expression
7
of
janvier
the bonds
2015
of brotherhood following the terrorist attacks committed in Paris on the 7th of January 2015, when dozens of foreign leaders were in the ranks of those offering their sympathies, among which the Israeli Prime Minister and the President of the Palestinian Authority. We know that you cannot show weakness in the face of terrorism, but we also know the perils of endless wars. We know that right must always prevail, that right must always prevail over might.
que l'attachement à
We
l'universel
know
et à la
from
paix
our
est
own
l'héritage
history
des siècles
that
passés comme la
the commitment,
condition du salut.
a universal commitment to peace,
J'affirme cela
is the legacy
au nom
of
de notre amitié
centuries
avec
gone by,
Israël, à
and
qui
the only
notre
way
engagement n'a jamais
towards
fait défaut.
salvation.
Au nom de
And
notre amitié aussi
on
avec le
behalf of
peuple
our friendship
palestinien,
with Israel,
pour qui nous voulons que la promesse
our
initiale
commitment to
des
which has
Nations
never
Unies,
faltered in the name of
celle
our
de
friendship with the
deux
Palestinian
États vivant
people,
côte à côte en paix et en
for whom we
sécurité,
want the initial promise of the UN Charter to be
réalité.
fulfilled, we want two states living side by
Or,
side
à
in
cette
peace
heure,
and security to become a reality.
Israël étend
However,
encore ses opérations
currently,
militaires à
Israel
Gaza
is
dans
further
l'objectif
extending its
déclaré
military operation in
de
Gaza
détruire le
with the
Hamas.
stated objective of
Mais ce
destroying
sont les
Hamas.
vies de centaines
But
de milliers de
there are
personnes déplacées,
Hundreds of thousands of
blessées,
people who've been
affamées,
displaced,
traumatisées,
injured,
qui continuent d'être détruites,
famished,
alors même
traumatized.
que le Hamas a été
Their lives
considérablement
are still being
affaibli
destroyed.
et que la négociation
Although
d'un
Hamas has
cessez-le-feu
been
durable
considerably
reste le moyen
weakened,
le plus sûr
and despite the fact that
d'obtenir la
negotiations
libération
on
des
a permanent
otages.
ceasefire are the
Rien,
surest means of
rien ne
ensuring
justifie plus la
the release
poursuite de
of
la guerre à
hostages.
Gaza.
Nothing
Rien.
justifies the ongoing war in
Tout
Gaza.
commande au
Nothing.
contraire d'y mettre un
On the
terme
contrary,
définitif
everything compels us
maintenant,
to
à
definitively
défaut de l'avoir fait
end
plus
it,
tôt.
since we
Pour
didn't do it
sauver des
earlier.
vies.
We must do this to save
Les vies
lives.
des otages
The
israéliens
lives
encore
of
détenus
Israeli
dans des conditions
hostages
atroces,
detained
les
in
vies des centaines de
atrocious
milliers de civils palestiniens
conditions, the
accablés par
lives
la
of
faim,
hundreds
la
of
souffrance,
thousands
la
of
peur de
Palestinian
mourir,
civilians
le
who are
deuil de leurs
tormented
proches.
by hunger, suffering,
Sauver toutes les vies.
the fear of dying,
Car
mourning
depuis
for their
désormais
loved
près
ones.
de 2
We must
ans,
save all
c'est bien la
lives, because for
négation de
almost 2 years now,
l'humanité
it
de
is
l'autre
the denial
et le
of the
sacrifice
humanity
de
of
la
the
vie
other
humaine qui
and the
prévalent.
sacrifice of human life
Oui.
which have prevailed.
Depuis le 7
Yes,
octobre,
since the
c'est
7th
bien
of
la vie de
October,
l'autre qui
it
est
is
niée.
the life of the other.
Nous le
is
disons depuis
being
le premier
denied.
jour de la guerre à Gaza, une
We've been
vie
saying this
vaut
since the
une
first
vie.
day of the war in Gaza.
Je
A
le
life is a life.
Pour avoir pris dans mes bras
I
les
know
familles
this
des
because I
otages
held
rencontrés à Tel
in
Aviv
my
puis à
arms the
Paris.
families of
Et je pense à
hostages
cet
I met in
instant
Tel
à
Aviv
la mère
and
d'Eyatar
in
David,
Paris.
otage
I'm thinking
affamé
of the
et
mother
montré à la
of
foule par
Eyatar
ses bourreaux.
David,
Je
a
pense à
hostage who was
Nimrod
famished
Cohen,
and displayed.
otage de 19 ans dont je viens de
I'm
saluer
thinking
le
of
père.
Nimrod Cohen, a
Je le
19-year-old
sais.
hostage whose
Pour être
father
allé
I just
aussi
met.
au
I
chevet des victimes
also know
palestiniennes
this
des
because I was
opérations
at the
militaires
bedside of the
israéliennes,
Palestinian victims
réfugiés
of
à
Israeli
Al-Arish,
military
des
operations,
femmes,
refugees in
des enfants,
Al-Arish, women
dont je
and
n'oublierai
children.
pas le regard.
I will never forget the way they looked
Je
at
le
me.
sais. Pour
I
avoir
know this
rencontré des jeunes de
because I met
Gaza accueillis en
young people
France,
from Gaza
et je pense
who
à
we
Rita Baroud,
are hosting
qui
in
aurait dû être
France.
avec
I'm thinking
nous
of
aujourd'hui
Rita Baroud,
et qui
who
continue de
should have
témoigner de
been
la
with us
détresse de ses proches
today,
à
who
Gaza.
continues to be a witness
Une
to the
vie
distress of
vaut une vie.
her loved ones in Gaza. A
Et
life is
notre
a life.
devoir à tous
We are duty-bound, all of us,
est de protéger les uns
to
et les
protect
autres.
each other.
Devoir
This
indivisible
duty is
comme l'est notre
indivisible,
humanité commune.
just as our common humanity is indivisible.
Une solution existe
There is
pour
a
briser le
solution,
cycle
a
de
way
la
of
guerre et
breaking
de la
the cycle
destruction.
of war and destruction.
C'est la
It
reconnaissance
lies in the
de l'autre,
recognition of
de sa
the other,
légitimité,
of his
de
and her
son
legitimacy,
humanité, de sa
humanity,
dignité.
and dignity.
Que les uns et les autres rouvrent les yeux et
We
voient
must
des visages
reopen
humains,
our eyes and
là où la
see
guerre a placé le
human
masque de
faces
l'ennemi ou
there
l'écrit d'une
where
cible.
war has deposited the mask
C'est
of
la
the enemy
reconnaissance
or the marks of a
qu'Israéliens
target.
et Palestiniens
We must
vivent
recognize that
dans une
Palestinians
solitude
and
jumelle.
Israelis
Solitude des
are living
Israéliens
in
après le
twin
cauchemar historique
solitude,
du 7
the
octobre
solitude of the
2023,
Israelis following the historic
solitude des
nightmare of the
Palestiniens
7th of October 2023,
à bout
and
de
the
force
solitude of
dans
Palestinians,
cette guerre
Palestinians
sans fin.
at their wits' end in the face of this
Le temps est
ceaseless
venu.
war. The time has come,
car le pire peut advenir.
because the
Qu'il s'agisse du sacrifice
worst
de tant d'autres
could
civils,
still come to
de
pass.
l'expulsion de
The
la
sacrifice
population
of
de
more
Gaza vers
civilians, the
l'Égypte,
expulsion
de
of the people
l'annexion
of
de la
Gaza to
Cisjordanie,
Egypt, the
de la
annexation
mort
of
des
the West
otages
Bank,
détenus par
the
le
death
Hamas,
of hostages
ou des
detained
faits
by
accomplis
Hamas,
qui changent de manière
or facts on the
irréversible
ground
la
which could
situation sur le
irreversibly
terrain.
change the situation there on the ground.
C'est pour cela
This is why,
C'est pour cela que nous
this is
devons
the very reason that
aujourd'hui,
today,
ici même,
here in
ouvrir
this
ce
chamber,
chemin de
we
paix.
must pave
Car
the
depuis
way
juillet
for
dernier,
peace, because
l'accélération
since
des
July of
événements
last
est
year,
terrible. Et au point où nous en
developments
sommes,
have
il est à craindre
accelerated.
que les accords
And
d'Abraham ou de Camp
at this
David
point,
soient
we have
remis en
reason to
cause
fear
par
that the
l'action
Abraham
d'Israël
Accords,
et que
the
la
Camp
paix
David
devienne
Accords
impossible
could be
pour
called in
longtemps au
question by
Moyen-Orient.
Israel, and that peace would become
Il pèse
impossible
donc sur
for a
nous
long time yet in the
une
Middle East.
responsabilité
It thus falls to
historique.
us this historic responsibility.
Nous devons tout
We
faire
must do
pour
everything within our
préserver la
power
possibilité
to
même
preserve the very
d'une solution
possibility of
à deux
a
États,
two-state solution.
Israël et la
Israel and
Palestine,
Palestine
vivant
living
côte à
side
côte,
by side
en paix.
in peace
et en
and
sécurité.
security.
Le temps est venu.
The time has
C'est
come.
pourquoi,
This is why,
fidèle à
true
l'engagement
to the
historique de mon pays au
historic commitment
Proche-Orient
of my country
pour
to
la
the Middle
paix
East,
entre le peuple israélien
to peace
et
between
le peuple palestinien,
Israelis and the Palestinians,
je déclare
this is why
que la France
I
reconnaît
declare that
aujourd'hui
today
l'État de
France
Palestine.
recognizes the state of Palestine.
Cette reconnaissance
This
est une manière
recognition
d'affirmer
is
que le
a
peuple
way
palestinien
of
n'est
affirming
pas un
that the
peuple en
Palestinian
trop,
people
qu'il
is
est
not a
au
people too
contraire
many.
ce
On
peuple
the
qui ne dit
contrary,
jamais adieu à rien,
this is a
pour
people
parler
who
avec
never
Mahmoud
says
Darwish,
goodbye to
un peuple
anything,
fort de
as
son
Mahmoud
histoire, de
Darwish
son enracinement,
said.
de sa dignité.
A people
Et la
with a strong
reconnaissance des
history,
droits légitimes
roots
du
and
peuple
dignity.
palestinien
The
n'enlève
recognition
rien
of the
aux droits
legitimate
du
rights of the
peuple
Palestinian
israélien,
people takes
que la
nothing
France
away
a
from the rights
soutenu dès
of
le
the people
premier
of
jour
Israel,
et au respect
who
desquels
France
elle n'est pas moins
supported from
attachée.
day one, and to the
Précisément car
respect
nous
of
sommes
which it is
convaincus
staunchly
que
committed.
cette
This is
reconnaissance
why we're
est la
so
solution
convinced
qui
that this
seule
recognition is the
permettra la paix
only
pour
solution
Israël.
that will allow
Jamais la France
for
n'a
Israel
manqué
to
à
live in
Israël
peace.
quand sa
France
sécurité
has
était
never
en
wavered
jeu,
standing
y compris
by
face aux
Israel's
frappes
side, even
iraniennes.
when its security was at
Cette
stake, including when there were
reconnaissance de l'État de
Iranian
Palestine
airstrikes.
est
This
une
recognition of the state
défaite
of
pour le
Palestine
Hamas, comme pour tous
is
ceux qui attisent la haine
a defeat for
antisémite,
Hamas,
nourrissent
just like
des
for all
obsessions
those who foment
antisionistes et veulent
anti-Semitism,
la destruction
nurture
de l'État
anti-Zionist
d'Israël.
obsessions, and who want
Cette
the destruction of the
reconnaissance de
state
la
of Israel.
France
This recognition
est accompagnée
by France
par celles qui seront annoncées aujourd'hui,
goes
entre
hand in hand
autres,
with
et je les en
others
remercie,
which will be
celles
announced today, and I
d'Andorre, de
thank them.
l'Australie, de la
Andorra,
Belgique,
Australia,
du
Belgium,
Canada, du Luxembourg, de
Luxembourg,
Malte,
Malta,
de Monaco,
Monaco,
du Portugal, du
Portugal, the
Royaume-Uni,
United
de
Kingdom,
Saint-Marin, qui ont
San
attendu
Marino.
avec nous ce moment
They
et saisissant l'appel de
are
juillet
here
dernier,
today,
ont fait le
They
choix de la
answered our call
responsabilité, de
issued in
l'exigence et
July,
de la paix.
and took
Cela,
the responsible
après le
choice, the
choix fait par
necessary choice, the
l'Espagne,
choice
l'Irlande,
to opt for
la
peace.
Norvège et la
Spain,
Slovénie en
Ireland,
2024
Norway,
et
and
tant
Sweden
d'autres auparavant.
Are also
Cette
going down
reconnaissance
the same path,
ouvre
and
le
many
chemin
others
d'une
did
négociation
before us too.
utile aux Israéliens
This
comme
recognition
aux
paved the
Palestiniens.
way for useful
Ce
negotiations,
chemin
useful for
est celui
Israelis
du
and
plan de paix et de
Palestinians.
sécurité
This
pour
path
tous
is a path
que l'Arabie
towards a
saoudite et la
peace and
France
security
ont
plan
soumis au
for
vote de
all.
cette Assemblée
France and Saudi
qu'il a
Arabia submitted this
adopté
plan
à une
to
très
this
large
assembly,
majorité.
and it adopted it by a
Il porte
large
notre
majority.
ambition commune de
It
briser
carries our
l'engrenage de
common
la violence
ambition to
et de
break the
changer la
spiral
donne
of
sur le terrain.
violence and to change
Nous avons
the
su
situation
faire
on
un
the
pas
ground.
les uns vers les
We
autres,
managed to take a
sortir de
step
nos postures
towards one
habituelles et
another,
nous
to move
donner
away
des
from
objectifs
our
concrets. Il nous appartient
habitual
maintenant
stances
ensemble
and to set
de
concrete
déclencher
objectives.
une mécanique
We
de
must
paix
now set in
répondant
motion
aux
a
besoins
cycle
de
of
chacun.
peace that meets the needs
Le
of
premier temps de
all
ce plan de
parties.
paix et de sécurité
The
pour
top
tous est
priority
celui de
of this
l'urgence
peace and security
absolue,
plan,
celle de coupler
and
la
it's
libération
very
des 48
urgent,
otages
that is to
et la
ensure
fin des
the
opérations
release of 48
militaires sur
hostages
tout le
and put an
territoire
end
de Gaza.
to military operations throughout the
Je
territory
salue
of
les
Gaza.
efforts du Qatar, de
I
l'Égypte
commend the
et des
efforts undertaken by
États-Unis pour y
Qatar,
parvenir.
Egypt, and
Et
the
demande à
US to
Israël
achieve
de ne
this.
plus
I
rien
ask
faire
Israel
qui
to
entrave
do
leur
nothing more
aboutissement.
that would thwart these efforts
Le
coming to
Hamas a été
fruition.
vaincu sur le plan
Hamas
militaire
was
par la
vanquished on
neutralisation
the
de ses
military
chefs
front
et de ses
as we
décideurs.
neutralized its
Il
leaders
doit
and
l'être sur le
decision
plan
makers.
politique
It must
pour être
also
véritablement
be
démantelé.
vanquished
Dès lors que le
politically to
cessez-le-feu
be
aura été
truly
agréé,
dismantled.
c'est un
As
effort
soon as a
massif que nous devons
ceasefire is
produire
agreed,
collectivement
we
pour
must
porter
mount a
secours à la
massive collective
population de
effort
Gaza.
to provide
Et je
assistance to
remercie
the people of
l'Égypte
Gaza.
et
I'd
la
like to thank
Jordanie
Egypt
de leur
and Jordan
engagement
for their
ici
commitment
et rappelle à
and
Israël l'obligation
recall
absolue qui est la
recall
sienne
Israel's
de faciliter l'accès
absolute
humanitaire à
obligation
Gaza pour aider
that
une
is to
population
facilitate
aujourd'hui
humanitarian access to
démunie de
Gaza to assist its population, which has
deuxième
lost
temps
everything.
et celui de la
The
stabilisation
second
et
priority
de la
is to
reconstruction.
stabilize and to rebuild
Gaza.
Gaza.
Une administration de
A
transition
transition
intégrant l'autorité
administration incorporating
palestinienne,
the
la
Palestinian
jeunesse
Authority,
palestinienne,
as well as
accompagnée de
the
forces de
young people of
sécurité dont nous
Palestine,
accélérerons
together
la
with
formation,
security forces,
aura
the
le
establishment of
monopole
which
de
we
la
will
sécurité à
accelerate,
Gaza.
will have the
Elle
monopoly
mettra en
over
œuvre le
security in Gaza. It
démantèlement
will
et
implement
le
the dismantlement
désarmement
and
du
disarmament
Hamas,
of Hamas.
avec le
And this
soutien des
with the
partenaires
support of international
internationaux
partners
et les moyens qui seront
and the
nécessaires
necessary
à cette mission
means
difficile.
required for this difficult
La France
mission.
est prête à contribuer à une
France
mission
stands ready to
internationale de
contribute
stabilisation
to an international
et à
stabilization
soutenir,
mission,
avec
as well
ses
as to
partenaires
support,
européens,
together with our European
la
partners,
formation et
the
l'équipement des
establishment
forces de
and
sécurité palestiniennes.
equipping of Palestinian
Dès
security
lors que la
forces.
négociation le
As soon
permettra,
as
le
negotiations
Conseil de
permit, the
sécurité
Security
pourra décider
Council
le déploiement
could
d'une mission
decide
de
to
soutien
deploy
civil et sécuritaire en
civilian
liaison
and security
avec les
support
autorités
mission,
palestiniennes,
liaising with the
avec le
Palestinian
consentement
authorities
des autorités
and with the
israéliennes.
consent of the Israeli authorities.
Il reviendra aussi à l'État de
Furthermore,
Palestine
it will be up to
de
the
rendre
state of
espoir à sa
Palestine to give
population éprouvée
hope
par des années de
to its
violence,
people,
d'occupation,
tested by
mais
years
aussi
of
de division et
violence and
d'incurie.
occupation,
Il
division, and
reviendra donc
negligence. It will be
d'offrir à
up
son
to the
peuple
state of Palestine
un
to
cadre
give its
d'expression
people a
démocratique,
framework for democratic
renouvelé
expression,
et
a framework
sécurisé.
that's been renewed and that is
Le
secure.
président Mahmoud Abbas
President
en a
Mahmoud
pris
Abbas
l'engagement auprès du prince
Committed to
Mohammed Ben
this
Salman
before Prince
et de
Mohammed
moi-même.
bin Salman and
Il a condamné avec
myself.
force les
He
attaques terroristes
forcefully
du 7
condemned
octobre
the terrorist attacks
2023.
committed on the
Il a
7th of October
affirmé son
2023.
soutien au
He
désarmement du
reiterated
Hamas
his commitment
et s'est
to disarming
engagé à
Hamas and
l'exclure de la
committed to
gouvernance à
excluding
venir de
Hamas
Gaza
from
comme de
future
l'ensemble
governance
du
in
territoire
Gaza as
palestinien.
well as from future
Il a
governance
affirmé
throughout
son engagement à
Palestinian
lutter
territory.
contre les
He
discours de haine
reaffirmed his
et a
commitment to
promis
combating
une
hate speech
rénovation en
and promised
profondeur de la
an
gouvernance
in-depth
palestinienne.
overhaul of Palestinian governance.
La France
France
sera attentive à la pleine
close
mise en
attention
œuvre de
to the
chacun des
full
engagements pris
implementation
auprès d'elle.
of
Cette
all of
autorité
the commitments
palestinienne
made to
renouvelée
us.
est une
This
condition
renewed Palestinian
nécessaire à la
authority
réussite
is
de
a
l'indispensable
necessary
négociation qu'il faudra
prerequisite
reprendre
for
pour
the
parvenir
success
à un
of the
accord sur
indispensable
chacune des
negotiations
questions
we'll need to
relatives
resume
au
to
statut
come to an
final.
agreement on each of the final status
C'est
issues.
dans ce cadre aussi
It's within this framework
que je pourrais
that
décider
I will
d'établir
be
une
able
ambassade
to
auprès de l'État de
decide
Palestine
to
dès lors
open
que tous les
an
otages détenus à
embassy
Gaza auront
to
été
the state of
libérés
Palestine
et
as
qu'un
soon as
cessez-le-feu
all of the
aura été
hostages
établi.
detained in Gaza have been freed
L'exigence de
and
la
a
France à
ceasefire
l'égard
has been
d'Israël
established.
ne sera pas moins
But
grande.
France will
Avec
be
ses
demanding
partenaires
of Israel
européens,
be just as considerable.
elle
Together with
indexera
our
le
European
niveau de sa
partners, we
coopération
will
avec
be
lui sur les
indexing,
dispositions qu'il prendra
pegging that is,
pour mettre
our
fin à la
level of
guerre et
cooperation with
négocier
Israel
la paix.
to the provisions, the
C'est bien
measures
grâce à
Israel will
ce
be taking to
chemin
put an end to the war
que
and
nous
negotiate peace.
obtiendrons
It's
un
thanks
État
to
de
this path
Palestine souverain,
that we will get a state of
indépendant
Palestine which
et
is
démilitarisé,
sovereign, independent, and
regroupant l'ensemble de
demilitarized,
ses territoires,
bringing together all of its
reconnaissant
territories,
Israël
recognizing
et étant
Israel
reconnu
and
par
being
Israël
recognized by
dans une
Israel
région
in a
qui
region
connaîtra
which will
enfin la
at
paix.
last see peace reign upon it.
J'attends aussi de nos partenaires
What I
arabes et musulmans
also
qui n'ont
expect of
pas
our
encore
Arab
fait
and Muslim
qu'ils
partners who
tiennent leur
have not yet
engagement de
done so
reconnaître
is for
l'État
them to
d'Israël
uphold their commitment
et
to
d'avoir
recognize the
avec
state
lui
of
des
Israel
relations
and to
normales
engage with
dès
Israel
lors que
in
l'État de Palestine
normal
aura été
relations as
établi.
soon as the state of Palestine has been
Ainsi
established.
ferons-nous ensemble la
In so
démonstration
doing,
d'une double
together we will
reconnaissance au
demonstrate
bénéfice
dual
de la
recognition
paix
for the benefit
et de
of
la
peace
sécurité de
and
tous
security
au
of
Proche-Orient.
all in the Middle East.
Voici, mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen,
quel est notre plan de
This
paix.
is our peace plan.
Il établit un engrenage
establishes
exigeant pour
A
sortir de la
demanding
guerre
mechanism
et entrer dans
to
une phase
end
décisive
the war
de négociation.
and enter into
Il
the
permet que la
negotiations
paix israélo-palestinienne
phase. It
soit le
allows
premier
for
pilier d'une
Israeli-Palestinian
nouvelle
peace to
architecture
be
de
the
paix
first
et de
pillar of a new
sécurité.
peace and security
au Proche et
architecture in
Moyen-Orient.
the Near East and the Middle East.
Il
It
crédibilise
lends
aussi
credibility
la
to
possibilité
the
d'une plus grande
possibility
intégration
of
économique.
further economic
Rien
integration.
ne sera possible sans que les autorités
Nothing
israéliennes
will be
s'approprient
possible
pleinement notre
unless
ambition
the
renouvelée
Palestinian
de
authorities
parvenir enfin
take full
à la
ownership
solution
of our
des deux
renewed
États.
ambition so that we can at
Je sais
last
leur
achieve
réticence
the two-state solution.
et leur
I know that
crainte.
they are reluctant. I know that they harbor
J'entends
fears.
avec beaucoup de respect le
And
peuple
with the
israélien,
utmost respect,
sa
I hear
tristesse et sa
the Israeli
fatigue.
people.
Et je veux croire que les autorités israéliennes
sadness,
l'entendront
their fatigue.
également
But I
et
want
sauront
for the
s'engager à
Israeli
leur tour.
authorities to also hear this
Je
and
sais que
to
le
in turn
peuple
take on
israélien et ses
commitments.
dirigeants
I know that the Israeli people
peuvent
and
en
the
avoir la
Israeli
force.
leadership have the strength to do
Je me
this.
souviens du jeune homme que j'étais,
I remember when I
apprenant
was a young
l'assassinat
man,
terrible
when I learned
d'Yitzhak
of the
Rabin,
horrible assassination of Yitzhak Rabin,
il y a près de 30 ans,
almost 30 years ago.
tué pour avoir voulu la paix.
He was killed for
Au moment où la mort
wanting
allait le
peace.
ravir, le guerrier
When death
héroïque
was
de
about
l'État
to
d'Israël
claim him,
venait
The
prononcer ces
heroic
mots.
warrior of the state of Israel
J'ai fait la guerre
said,
aussi
and I
longtemps
quote,
qu'il
I
n'y avait
fought
aucune chance.
so long as
de
there was
faire la
no chance of peace. End of
Cette
quote.
chance existe.
But
là,
today, there is
aujourd'hui,
such a chance. Today, here,
142 États proposent cette paix,
142 states
main
are
tendue, prête
proposing
à être
this
serrée.
peace. They're
Alors
extending
oui,
out their hands,
le
ready
temps
to
est
be
venu
shaken.
d'arrêter
So yes,
la guerre à
the time
Gaza,
has come
les
to put an end to the
massacres,
war
la
in
mort,
Gaza.
tout de
Massacres,
suite.
death,
L'urgence
right
nous le
now
commande. Le temps est venu pour
Urgency
Israël de vivre en paix et en
is what drives
sécurité.
us. The time
De
has
la
come
Galilée à la
for
mer
Israel
Rouge,
to live
par
in
la
peace and
mer Morte,
security,
par
from
le
the
lac de
Galilee
Tibériade et par
to the Red
Jérusalem.
Sea, through the
Le
Dead
temps est
Sea and
venu
the
de ne
Lake
plus
of
discuter
Tiberias
nulle
and
part
Jerusalem. The
l'existence
time has come
d'un
to no
État
longer
d'Israël et d'en faire une
no
évidence.
longer talk about the existence
Le
of the
temps
state
est
of
venu
Israel. It's
de rendre
self-evident.
justice
The
au
time has
peuple
come to do justice to the Palestinian
et
people
ainsi de
and thus to
reconnaître un
recognize
État
the
de
state of
Palestine,
Palestine,
frère et voisin, à
brotherly
Gaza
country
et en
and neighbor
Cisjordanie
in
et
Gaza
par
and the West Bank
Jérusalem.
and in Jerusalem.
Le temps est
The
venu
time has come
de chasser de ces
to
terres le
cast out
visage hideux du
from
terrorisme
these
et de
lands the
bâtir
vile
la
face
paix.
of terrorism
Oui,
and to forge peace.
bâtir la
Yes,
paix.
to
C'est
forge
ce qui nous
peace.
rassemble
This is
ici.
what has
Et
brought
telle
us
est
here
l'espérance
today.
qui peut se construire.
And we're very
Alors que pour
hopeful that
certains
we will
commence
be
une
able
année nouvelle.
to forge it.
C'est un choix à faire
It is a choice we
et
must
c'est
make.
notre devoir.
It is our duty.
La paix est beaucoup plus exigeante,
Peace
beaucoup
is
plus
much more
difficile.
difficult. It demands
que toutes
much
les
more of
guerres.
us than all wars.
Mais le temps est venu.
The time has come.
Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you
Je
for your
donne à
kind
présent la
attention.
parole
I
à Son
now
Altesse le Prince
invite
Faisal
His
bin Farhan
Royal
Al Saoud,
Highness,
ministre des Affaires étrangères d'Arabie
Minister
Saoudite,
of Foreign Affairs
au nom de Son
of Saudi
Altesse
Arabia.
royale le Prince
He will
Mohammed
be
bin
speaking
Salman
on
bin
behalf of His
Abdulaziz
Royal
Al
Highness
Saoud,
Prince Mohammed
Prince
bin Salman
héritier et
bin
Premier ministre du
Abdulaziz
Royaume
Al
d'Arabie
Saud,
Saoudite.
Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فخامة رئيس الجمهورية الفرنسية، معالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة، معالي رئيسة الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أتشرف بإلقاء كلمة المملكة العربية السعودية كرئيس مشارك في المؤتمر نيابة عن صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير محمد بن سلمان آل سعود ولي العهد رئيس مجلس الوزراء حفظه الله. ويطيب لي أن أنقل لكم تحيات سيدي خادم الحرمين الشريفين الملك سلمان بن عبد العزيز آل سعود حفظه الله وسموه الكريم، وتمنياتهما بنجاح أعمال هذا المؤتمر. وندعو نشكر فخامة الرئيس إيمانويل ماكرون ومعالي السيد أنطونيو غوتيريش ومعالي رئيس الجمعية العامة على جهودهم لإنجاح المؤتمر الذي يشكل فرصة تاريخية نحو تحقيق السلام وتأكيد الالتزام الدولي بتنفيذ حل الدولتين. الحضور الكرام، ينعقد هذا المؤتمر برئاسة مشتركة بين المملكة العربية السعودية والجمهورية الفرنسية في ظل استمرار سلطات الاحتلال الإسرائيلية في نهجها العدواني ومواصلتها لجرائمها الوحشية تجاه الأشقاء الفلسطينيين وانتهاكاتها في الضفة الغربية
our brothers, the Palestinians in Gaza Strip and its violations in the West Bank and Al-Quds al-Sharif and its repeated attacks on the sovereignty of Arab and Muslim countries, the latest of which was the attack against Qatar. This underlines the insistence of Israel to continue with its aggressive practices that threaten regional and international peace and stability and undermine efforts of peace in the region. This reiterates our deeply rooted conviction that the implementation
إن
of the
الموقف
two-state solution
التاريخي
is the only
لفخامة
way
الرئيس
to achieve
الفرنسي
just and
والاعتراف بدولة
permanent
فلسطين
peace. The
واتخاذ العديد
historic
من الدول لهذا
position of
الموقف
His
الشجاع
Excellency, the French President, to
والتأييد
recognize the state of
الدولي الواسع
Palestine, and the
لقرار
fact that many
جمعية
countries
العامة
have
للأمم
taken the
المتحدة اعتماد إعلان
similar
نيويورك
courageous position
بشأن تسوية
and the
قضية
broad
فلسطين بالوسائل
support
السلمية
for the resolution
وتنفيذ
of the
حل
General
الدولتين
Assembly to
الذي
adopt
صوت لصالحه
the declaration, the New York
142 دولة
Declaration on the peaceful settlement of the
يعكس
question of
إرادة المجتمع
Palestine
الدولي
and the implementation of the
في إنصاف
two-state
الشعب
solution
الفلسطيني
that received
وترسيخ حقه
142 votes in
التاريخي
its favor
والقانوني
reflects the will
وفق
of the
المرجعيات
international
الدولية
community
والقرارات
to render
الأممية ذات
justice to the
الصلة
Palestinian people
ومبادرة
and
السلام
consolidate
والعرب.
their legal historic right in
الحضور
line
الكرام.
with international frameworks
إن المملكة
relevant to
عازمة على
resolutions
مواصلة
and the Arab peace
شراكاتها مع
initiatives.
الجمهورية الفرنسية
The
وجميع
kingdom
الدول
is keen on
الداعية
continuing
للسلام
its partnership
في
with
سبيل متابعة
France and
تنفيذ
all
مخرجات هذا
countries calling
المؤتمر
for peace to follow
لوضع
up on
حد
the
للحرب
implementation of the
بغزة
outcomes of this
ووقف
conference,
جميع
to
الإجراءات
put an end
الأحادية
to the war in Gaza
التي
and stop
تهدد
all
السيادة
unilateral
الفلسطينية
measures that threaten
والعمل على إنهاء
Palestinian
الصراع في
sovereignty,
المنطقة
to work on
وتجسيد
ending the
الدولة
conflict in the
الفلسطينية
region
المستقلة
and
على
establish the
حدود عام
Palestinian independent state on the
1967 وعاصمتها القدس
1967
الشرقية.
borders with
وفي
East
الختام
Jerusalem as its capital. In
نجدد شكرنا
conclusion,
للدول التي
we
اعترفت
thank
أو
again
أعلنت
those
عزم
countries
الاعتراف
that have
بالدولة
recognized or
الفلسطينية
have announced
وندعو
their
بقية
intention to
الدول
recognize the state
لاتخاذ
of
هذه
Palestine. We
الخطوة
call
التاريخية
all other countries to
التي
take a
سيكون لها
similar
بالغ الأثر
historic
في دعم
step that
الجهود
will have a
باتجاه
great
تنفيذ حل
impact on
الدولتين
supporting the efforts towards the
وتحقيق
implementation of the
السلام
two-state
الدائم
solution,
والشامل في منطقة
achieve
الشرق الأوسط
permanent and comprehensive peace in
وإيجاد
the
واقع
Middle East,
جديد
and
تنعم
find a
فيه
new
المنطقة
reality
بالأمن
whereby the
والاستقرار
region
والازدهار.
can
والسلام
enjoy
عليكم ورحمة
peace,
الله
stability,
وبركاته.
and prosperity. Thank you.
Je remercie Son Altesse le
thank
Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saoud.
His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin
J'invite à
Salman
présent Son
Abdulaziz
Excellence M.
Al
Antonio Guterres,
Saud. I now invite His
Secrétaire
Excellency
général de
Mr. Antonio
l'Organisation des
Guterres,
Nations
Secretary
Unies,
General of the United
à
Nations
faire une
Organization,
déclaration.
to issue a statement.
Distinguished co-chairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the government of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this international conference on implementing the two-state solution. I also want to acknowledge the Palestinian delegation and once again note my disappointment that they were denied the opportunity to be fully represented. Excellencies, let's have no illusions. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has gone unresolved for generations. Dialogue has faltered. Resolutions have been flouted. International law has been breached. Decades of diplomacy have come up short. The situation is intolerable and it is deteriorating by the hour. We are here today to help navigate the only way out of this nightmare, a two-state solution, where two independent, sovereign, democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace and security with their secure and recognized borders on the basis of pre-1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states, in line with international law, UN resolutions, and other relevant agreements. I welcome the measures many member states are taking to galvanize support for the two-state solution, including the pledges to recognize the state of Palestine. And I welcome the General Assembly's endorsement of the New York Declaration. Excellencies, nothing can justify the horrific 7 October terror attacks by Hamas or the taking of hostages, both of which I have repeatedly condemned. And nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people or any form of ethnic cleansing. The systematic decimation of Gaza, the starvation of the population, the killing of tens of thousands of civilians, most of them women and children, and hundreds of our own humanitarians. I call once again for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, and the immediate, full, safe, unconditional, and unhindered humanitarian access. Excellencies, nothing can also excuse developments in the West Bank that pose an existential threat to a two-state solution. The relentless expansion of settlements, the creeping threat of annexation, the intensification of settler violence, all of it must stop. The situation is morally, legally, and politically intolerable. We must recommit ourselves to the two-state solution before it is too late. A solution in which two independent, contiguous, democratic, viable, and sovereign states are mutually recognized and fully integrated into the international community. Excellencies, those who stand in the way are obligated to answer a fundamental question. What is the alternative? A one-state scenario where Palestinians are denied basic rights, expelled from their homes and their land, forced to live under perpetual occupation, discrimination, and subjugation? How is this possible in the 21st century? How is it acceptable? This is neither peace nor justice. It will only increase the growing isolation of Israel on the global stage, and let's be clear, statehood for the Palestinians is a right, not a reward. And denying statehood would be a gift to extremists everywhere. Without two states, there will be no peace in the Middle East, and radicalism will spread around the world. Excellences,
this conference must mark a turning point. It must pave the way for irreversible progress, to put an end to the illegal occupation and to make good on our collective aspiration for a two-state solution. All of this is fully in line with adherence to international law. It has been approved by the General Assembly and supported by the international community. It is the only credible path towards a just and lasting peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and the only credible path towards peace and security throughout the Middle East as a whole. This will demand difficult decisions be taken from us all. This will demand courage and leadership based on principles from all sides. I urge you to do everything in your power to allow the two-state solution to prevail. This for the people of Israel, Palestine, and for humankind as a whole. I thank you. I thank the Secretary General of the United Nations Organization. I now invite Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock, President of the General Assembly, to make a statement.
Your Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, Your Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Your Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies. Taking over the presidency of the General Assembly, I received many letters. One moved me deeply. Attached to it were drawings by 3 Palestinian children, Remas, Enas, and Retal. The images were heartbreaking. One showed a school before and after, beneath a bright sun and a blue, clear sky. In the first, the school with open doors, and happiness. In the second, their school lies in rubble. A lone boy stands on the debris of what must be once have been his safe place. Perhaps he had a favorite class, a favorite teacher, like our children, a best friend he played with there. Now, all of it is gone. All of the laughter of the children blown away. At that age, children should not be drawing pictures of war. Children should be learning mathematics. They should be playing with friends and scratch dragons or castles, not death and destruction. Yet for the children of Gaza, this is their reality. Their horror lasted and lasts for over 700 days. Tens of thousands have lost their lives. Tens of thousands of dreams which never will come true. So many killed without the world even learning their names. Until we heard one voice so loud we could not overhear it. The voice of Hind Rajab, captured in a phone call with a red crescent while shelling rained down. After the car she was in was attacked, over and over again, killing her aunt, uncle, and 3 of her cousins next to her. She called over and over again, "I'm so scared, please come." The rescuers tried to calm her as they tried to reach her. They could not. Hind was killed before help arrived. The world failed her. As the world has also failed Guterres Abbas and his brother Ariel. Guterres was just 9 months old, the youngest child abducted by Hamas on October 7th, taken with his 4-year-old brother Ariel and their mother. Both were killed in Gaza by terrorists. The world will remember their names as symbols of innocent childhood stolen by terror. I've met with the families of the hostages, fathers, mothers, siblings, aunts, grandparents, still waiting for their loved ones to come home from wherever Hamas is holding them after more than 700 days. I've also met with Palestinian families, fathers, mothers, siblings, aunts, and grandparents, whose loved ones are buried in the ruins of Gaza. Their message is always the same: we want peace. Or as one Israeli mother told me, it does not bring my child back if a Palestinian mother loses her child in Gaza. Humanity is not about choosing sides. It's about recognizing that every life matters the same. A life is a life. A Palestinian girl's life is alive. An Israeli boy's life is alive. All the children of the Middle East deserve to grow up knowing only the sun shining on their schools, the laughter of their friends in the playground, and the joy of a meal shared with their families. Not the horrors of starvation, not the horrors of war and terror. Excellencies, the General Assembly has been very clear. We need an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza now. Israel must immediately facilitate the full, rapid, safe, and unhindered entry and delivery of humanitarian assistance to all Palestinian civilians. Hamas must immediately and unconditionally release all remaining hostages. But the horrors of Gaza make equally clear that we cannot allow such devastation to happen again. While the situation in Gaza is unacceptable, settlement expansions and demolitions in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are eroding any prospects for a political solution. The decade-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict cannot be resolved by endless war, permanent occupation, and recurrent terror. The only way to ensure that future generations of both Palestinians and Israelis can live in peace, security, and dignity is the two-state solution. As the Secretary General said, it's a right, not a reward, to live in your own state, as all humans around the world. We know that some think this is naive. The first resolution on this matter is almost as old as this organization. 78 years ago, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, laying the foundation for two states, knowing it's the only way for peace. And to those of you who argue now, but we have tried for decades and failed over and over again, there can be only one answer. If we would stop aiming for what is right because we have not succeeded yet, then evil would prevail. That would be the end of this institution. This institution which promised to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. It would erode the UN's foundational mission to achieve peace, justice, and equal rights for both Israelis and Palestinians. Excellencies, that is what today's conference and the New York Declaration are so crucial. The message we are sending today is no, we are not giving up. The international community does not only remain committed to the two-state solution, we are also identifying tangible, time-bound, and irreversible steps for its realization. And we are willing to take decisive measures and provide international guarantees. Of course, this conference and the New York Declaration will face criticism. Some will say a piece of paper cannot change realities on the grounds for Palestinians. Others will dismiss the vision of two states outright. But the fact remains, the New York Declaration was endorsed by 142 member states. And this majority clearly says the war in Gaza must end now. It condemns the attacks committed by Hamas against civilians on 7th of October. It condemns the attacks by Israel against civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza. It calls on Hamas to end its rule in Gaza and hand over its weapons. A sovereign and viable state of Palestine needs to be established, living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security, with mutually recognized borders and full regional integration. Excellencies, the call for peace and the two-state solution is not an abstract. Not for the children watching missiles destroy their school. Not for the families waiting for news that their sons and daughters might be released from captivity. Not for the UN staff in Gaza who have witnessed their colleagues shot. Not for those who have been injured or maimed and will have to live with the trauma of this conflict for the rest of their life. It's an aspiration, but it's also an obligation. We owe it to the memory of Fint, Krier, and Ariel, and the many, many others. And we owe it to the children like Remas, Enas, and Rital, and all the children of Palestine and all the children of Israel, hoping for a better tomorrow, so that they may not inherit rubble, grief, and despair, but safety, dignity, and hope, to live one day in peace, side by side.
Je remercie Madame la Présidente
I thank
de l'Assemblée
the
générale.
President of the General Assembly.
J'invite à présent son
I now
Excellence Monsieur
invite
Mahmoud
His
Abbas, Président de
Excellency
l'État de
Mahmoud
Palestine,
Abbas,
à faire sa
President of the
déclaration
State
par
of Palestine,
visioconférence.
to deliver a statement via video conference.
شكرا. بسم الله الرحيم. فخامة الرئيس إمانويل ماكرون
Your Excellency, President
صاحب
Emmanuel
السمو
Macron,
الملكي الأمير محمد بن
Your
سلمان
Royal
آل
Highness
سعود
Prince Mohammed bin Salman
سمو
Al Saud,
الأمير فيصل بن فرحان وزير خارجية
Your Highness
السعودية
Prince Saud,
معالي
Faisal
الأمين
bin
العام
Farhan, Minister of
للأمم
Foreign Affairs, Your
المتحدة
Excellency,
أنطونيو غوتيريس
Antonio Guterres,
القادة
Secretary General of the
ورؤساء
United
الوفود
Nations,
الكرام
distinguished
السلام
leaders and
عليكم
heads of
ورحمة
delegations,
الله
peace, mercy, and
وبركاته.
blessings of God be upon you.
أعبر باسم دولة
On behalf
فلسطين
of the State of
عن بالغ
Palestine,
التقدير
I would like to
للرئاسة
express my
المشتركة
deepest appreciation
وللأمم
for
المتحدة
the co-presidency,
ولكل الدول
the United
المشاركة
Nations, and
على
all
ما صدر عن
participating
مؤتمر
states
يوليو من إعلان
for the
نيويورك
historic New
التاريخي
York
الذي
Declaration
أقرته
that was
الجمعية
issued
العامة
during
بأغلبية
July's conference
ساحقة
and adopted by the
إذانا
General Assembly
ببدء
by an
خطوات لا
overwhelming
رجعة
majority.
عنها
It marked the
لإنهاء
beginning of an
الكارثة
irreversible path
الإنسانية
towards ending
وإنهاء
the
الاحتلال
humanitarian
وفق
catastrophe
الشرعية
and
الدولية
ending occupation
ومبادرة
pursuant
السلام
to international
العربية
legitimacy and the
وتجسيد
Arab
دولة
Peace
فلسطين
Initiative. It was
المستقلة
the embodiment of an
بعاصمتها
independent
القدس
state of
الشرقية
Palestine
إلى
with
جانب
East Jerusalem
دولة
as its capital,
إسرائيل
living
في
side by
أمن
side with
وسلام
Israel in peace,
وحسن جوار.
security, and good neighborliness.
لقد أكد الإعلان
The
أن
declaration
الحرب على
stressed
شعبنا
that the war
يجب
against
أن
our people
تتوقف
must
فوراً
come to an
وبشكل
immediate
مستدام
and durable
وأن
end.
جرائم الحصار
It noted that the
والتجميع
crimes
والتدمير
emanating from the siege, the
يمكن أن
starvation, and
تكون
destruction
وسيلة
cannot be
لتحقيق
a means
الأمن.
of achieving
لذلك
security.
نطالب بوقف
Therefore,
دائم
we call
لإطلاق
for a
النار
permanent
وضمان
ceasefire.
إدخال المساعدات
We need to
الإنسانية
ensure
عبر
humanitarian
الأمم
access
المتحدة
through the United Nations and UNRWA.
والإفراج عن
We
الرهائن
need to guarantee the
والأسرى
release
جميعاً
of hostages, all
وانسحاب
hostages
قوات
and prisoners,
الاحتلال من غزة
with the withdrawal of the occupation
والبدء
forces
بإعادة
from Gaza.
الإعمار دون
We need a
تأخير
start
في
without
غزة
delay
والضفة
of Gaza, the
الغربية
West Bank
من خلال
reconstruction
المؤتمر
through
الدولي
the
في
Cairo
القاهرة.
International Conference.
ونشيد أيها السيدات والسادة
Your Excellencies, ladies and
بدور
gentlemen,
الوساطة
we would
المصرية
like to
القطرية
commend
الأمريكية
the
التي
Egyptian
تسعى
Qatari
لوقف
US
الحرب
mediation that tries to put an
ونثمن
end to this
مواقف
war.
كل من
We
مصر
also commend the
والأردن
positions
من
of
رفض
Egypt and Jordan who
تهجير
reject the
الذي
displacement
يرفضه
of
المجتمع
Palestinians,
الدولي
a matter
معنا.
rejected by the
إن
international
دولة
community as
فلسطين
well.
هي الجهة
The state of
الوحيدة
Palestine is the
المؤهلة
only
لتحمل
entity
المسؤولية
eligible to
الكاملة عن
assume
الحكم
full
والأمن في
responsibility
غزة
for
عبر
governance
لجنة
and security
إدارية
in Gaza.
مؤقتة
This comes through an
مرتبطة
interim
بالحكومة
administrative committee
الفلسطينية
affiliated
بالضفة
to the
الغربية
Palestinian government in
وبدعم
the West Bank
ومشاركة
with
عربية ودولية.
Arab and international support and participation.
لن يكون لحماس دور في الحكم
Hamas will have no role in government.
وعليها وغيرها
Hamas
من
and other
الفصائل
factions
تسليم السلاح
must
للسلطة
surrender their
الفلسطينية
weapons to the Palestinian
لأننا
Authority.
نريد دولة
What we
واحدة
want
غير
is
مسلحة
one unified state
وقانوناً
without
واحداً
weapons, a state
وقوات
with one
أمن
law
شرعية
and one
واحدة
legitimate
ونؤكد إدانتنا لجرائم
security
الاحتلال
forces.
كما
We stress
ندين
our
القتل
condemnation of
وأسر
the occupation's
المدنيين
crimes. We also
بما في
condemn the
ذلك
killing and
ما
detention of
قامت به
civilians,
حماس
including
في السابع من
Hamas's actions
أكتوبر
on October the 7th,
2023.
2023.
في المقابل
On the other hand, we call for an end to the settlements, the annexation, settlers' terrorism, and the attacks against Islamic and Christian holy sites. We condemn the occupation policies that isolate Jerusalem mountains and expand construction on Area E1. We condemn the narrative, the Israeli narrative on Greater Israel, which flouts international law. It represents a direct threat to Arab national security and international peace. This comes in addition to the brutal aggression against the sovereignty of the brotherly states of Qatar and other Arab countries. This necessitates a firm, deterrent international stance. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of Palestine continues to adopt a comprehensive reform agenda promoting governance, transparency, the rule of law, and the reform of the financial system. It also works on the reform of educational curriculum in line with UNESCO's standards, and this will be achieved within 2 years. We're establishing a unified social welfare system after the abolition of all previous payments to the families of prisoners and martyrs. This system is currently undergoing international audit by a specialized international firm. We underline our commitment to organize presidential and parliamentary elections after the end of the war, and within 1 year, we will draft an interim constitution within 3 months to ensure the transfer of power from the authority to the state. This will ensure that no party or individual will participate unless they adhere to the political program and the international commitments of the Palestine Liberation Organization and the rules of international legitimacy. The elections will be held under international observance. Ladies and gentlemen, we desire a modern democratic state based on the rule of law, pluralism, power sharing, equality, justice, and the empowerment of women and youth. We commend the positions of those countries that recognized the state of Palestine. We call on those who have not yet done so to follow suit. We call for your support so that Palestine become a full-fledged member of the United Nations. We have already recognized the right of Israel to existence in 1988 and in 1993, and we still recognize the state of Israel. In this vein, I would like to thank France, Britain, Canada, Australia, and Belgium, in addition to Portugal, Luxembourg, San Marino, and Andorra, and other countries that have been mentioned by His Excellency, the President of France. And we recall with appreciation all 149 countries who have already recognized the state of Palestine earlier. They have participated in our long struggle, the last of which was Spain, Ireland, Norway, Slovenia, and Armenia. We would also like to commend the important role of the presidency of this conference, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France, as well as Britain, in galvanizing more international recognition. We'd also like to thank all participating countries in this conference for their important role issuing the New York Declaration and taking irreversible steps to bring about durable peace based on the two-state solution and based on international legitimacy. We would also like to commend the role of the brotherly and friendly countries that support our Palestinian cause in international fora. We would like to commend in particular the role of Algeria, which is assuming the Arab seat in the Security Council. We commend the positions of the peoples and organizations that support the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to freedom, independence, and statehood. We reject any confusion, I repeat, any confusion between the solidarity with the Palestinian cause and the issue of anti-Semitism. We reject the latter proceeding from our values and principles. We would also like to express our readiness to work with the U.S. President Donald Trump, with Saudi Arabia, France, and the United Nations and all partners to implement the peace plan adopted during this conference within a specific timetable with international guarantees and monitoring. This would open the gates towards a just peace and comprehensive regional cooperation. In this regard, I call upon Israel to immediately sit on the negotiating table, to put an end to this bloodshed and bring about just and comprehensive peace. And I address the Israeli people saying, our future and yours banks on peace. Enough violence and war. Our generations deserve to enjoy freedom and security. Let the people in our region live in durable peace and good neighborliness. And I would like to seize this opportunity to address all the Jews in the world, wishing them a good New Year. And to our patient Palestinian people in their homeland and everywhere, I would like to tell you that the dawn of freedom and liberty is coming, no doubt. That day, ladies and gentlemen, is the day of the state of Palestine and the start of the peace process in the Middle East. We hope that we will call very soon to an international conference that will bring about this matter. Peace and blessings of God be upon you.
Je remercie le président de l'État de Palestine.
The President of the State of Palestine.
Excellences, Mesdames les représentantes, Messieurs les représentants,
Distinguished
avant de
representatives,
suspendre la
before
séance, nous vous demandons de bien vouloir rester assis pour la suite du programme de cet
we would
après-midi.
ask you to kindly remain seated for
La
the
séance
next part of this
est suspendue.
afternoon's program. This meeting is suspended.
Nous allons à présent entendre les
We will
déclarations des chefs
now
d'État et de
listen to
gouvernement,
statements made by
y
heads of
compris
state and
celles
government,
des coprésidents des groupes de
including by the
travail au cours
co-chairs of
desquels
the
ils vont
working
présenter
groups.
les
They
efforts
will
concrets
present
déployés dans la mise en
tangible
œuvre de
efforts
la
made
déclaration
to
de New York.
implement the New York
Je
Declaration.
rappelle que cette Assemblée a
I
endossé la déclaration de New
remind
York
you
avec
that
une large
this assembly
majorité
endorsed the New York
142 voix.
Declaration by a
Il est
vast
rappelé aux
majority to the
délégations
tune of
que les déclarations sont limitées à 5 minutes pour
142
les chefs
votes.
d'État
We
et de
remind
gouvernement
delegations that
et 3
statements are
minutes pour les
limited
ministres.
to 5 minutes for
Compte
heads
tenu
of
du
state
grand
and
nombre
government,
d'interventions prévues, nous
and
rappelons aux
those
délégations que les
by
microphones seront coupés
ministers
automatiquement après 5 minutes
should be limited
pour
to
les chefs
3
d'État et de gouvernement
minutes. Microphones
et
will
3
be
minutes
cut
pour
off
les ministres.
automatically after these time limits
Je
have been
donne à
exceeded.
présent la
I
parole
now give the floor
à Sa Majesté le roi de
to
Jordanie.
the King of Jordan, Your Majesty.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellencies, my friends, I thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this meeting. We meet here at the UN, where every country, every people are promised a voice. We meet to raise our voices for peace and for justice, for the only path to ensuring security for the Middle East and beyond, the two-state solution. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. Almost every year since, our countries have met within these halls to decry the injustice and violence of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and seek solutions. And now, for nearly 2 years, we have been witnesses to a horrific level of bloodshed and destruction in Gaza. It stands in flagrant violations of international laws and the values of our shared humanity, and it threatens the foundations of future peace. The war in Gaza must end. Humanitarian aid must flow unhindered, and all illegal and unilateral measures in the West Bank and settler violence must also end. A clear choice stands before us. On one side, to continue down the dark and bloody path of war and conflict, or to take the path of peace through the two-state solution. And today the world is taking a significant step on the path to achieving just and lasting peace. This global rally behind the two-state solution sends a clear message. The conflict must end. The two-state solution is the only path to the just and lasting peace that fulfills the rights of all our peoples. We thank all countries that have recognized the state of Palestine, and now we must work to stop all measures that undermine the two-state solution. We must make sure that today is a step in a continued effort to realize it. As we work on ending the war in Gaza, we must also do all we can to restore hope. The commitment so many countries are making to a future of peace today begins that long, difficult, but essential process. Thank you.
Je remercie Sa Majesté le
I
roi de
thank
Jordanie. Je donne
His
maintenant
Majesty
la
the King
parole
of Jordan. I
au
now give the
président de la
floor to
Turquie.
the President of Turkey.
Sayın Devlet ve Hükümet Başkanları,
Excellencies, Heads of
Sayın
State and Government,
Genel Sekreter,
His
kıymetli
Excellency,
heyet
the
üyeleri,
Secretary General,
sizlere en kalbi
esteemed
duygularımla,
delegation members,
hürmetle
let me greet you
selamlıyorum.
all with most heartfelt
Öncelikle bu
feelings
konferansın
and with kind regards.
eş başkanlıklarını üstlenen
First of all,
Fransa
I would like
ve
to
Suudi
express my
Arabistan'a
gratitude to
şükranlarımı
France
sunuyorum.
and to Saudi Arabia.
Filistin devletini tanıma
co-chairing
kararı
this
alan
conference.
ülkeleri
I
tebrik
congratulate
ediyorum.
all the countries that have
Bu adımın
decided to recognize
ve
the state
izleyen
of
dönemdeki
Palestine
girişimlerin
for honoring the
iki
words of
devletli
justice
çözümün
and
hayata
of conscience.
geçirilmesini
I hope that
hızlandırmasını
this step,
diliyorum.
along with the initiatives to be
Coğrafyamızda
undertaken in the coming
yaklaşık
period, will
2
accelerate
yıldır
the implementation
İsrail
of a
hükümetinin
two-state
artan
solution.
saldırıları
In our
sebebiyle
region, an
büyük bir
unprecedented
insani
catastrophe has been
felaket
unfolding for nearly 2 years
65
now
bini
under
aşkın
the Israeli
insanın
government's
hayatına
heavy
mal
and
olan
inhumane attacks.
Gazze'deki
The
katliam
massacre
tüm
and
şiddetiyle
brutality in Gaza
sürüyor.
continues with
Elini
all its
vicdanına koyan hiç
intensity.
kimse yaşananları kabul
since
edemez. Dahası böyle bir soykırıma
It is
sessiz
true that anyone
kalamaz.
who has a conscience cannot
Netanyahu
possibly accept
hükümetinin
this
amacı
or
Filistin
remain
devletinin
silent
kurulmasını
vis-à-vis all this.
imkansız hale
The
getirmek,
Netanyahu
Filistin halkını
government
da
is trying
mümkün
to make
olduğunca
sure
göçe zorlamaktır. Bu olumsuz gelişmelerin ortasında Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi üyelerinin de dahil olduğu bir grup ülkenin Filistin devletini tanıma kararı alması son derece önemli tarihi bir karardır. Filistin Devlet Başkanı Abbas'ın bugün bizimle birlikte olmasını arzu ederdik. Buna rağmen bugün söz olan tüm katılımcıların aynı zamanda Filistin halkının da sesi olmasını çok kıymetli buluyorum. Şu da bir gerçek ki bugün Filistin davası artık dünyaya mal olmuştur.
It is also a fact that today the Palestinian cause has become a global issue.
Bu salondaki katılım bunun en güzel ispatıdır. Avrupa'da, Asya'da, Amerika'da ve Afrika'da, sokakta, sosyal medyada, basında özgür Filistin nidalarına daha önce hiç duymadığımız kadar tanık oluyoruz. Şu çelişki buradaki dostların dahil kimsenin dikkatinden kaçmamalıdır. Holocaust zulmüyle kökü kazınmak istenen bir toplumu yöneten Netanyahu hükümeti aynı toprağı, suyu, havayı, denizi paylaştığı binlerce yıllık komşularına soykırım uyguluyor. Bu zulmün karşısında durmak, uluslararası toplumun hukuki bir görevi olduğu kadar vicdani sorumluluğudur. Uluslararası toplum, Batı Şeria'daki yayılmacılığı, Doğu Kudüs'teki oldu bittileri ve bölgede istikrarsızlığı yayma girişimlerini durdurmak zorundadır. Aksi takdirde ne bir uluslararası düzenden ne de evrensel değerlerin savunulmasından söz edilebilir. Derinleşen işgal ve ilhak politikalarının hedefi açıktır. İki devletli çözüm vizyonunu öldürmek, Filistin devletinin yaşayabileceği zemin bırakmamak, Filistin halkını sürgün etmek ve bölgede yayılmacı emellerini hayata geçirmek, buna asla izin verilemez. Bu konferansta Filistin devletini tanıma cesaretini gösteren ülkelerin kararlı, somut ve caydırıcı adımlarla bu tarihi duruşun arkasını doldurmalarını temenni ediyorum. Artık ateşkesin ilanı, Gazze'ye insani yardımların engelsiz şekilde girişinin sağlanması ve İsrail'in Gazze'den güçlerini çekmesi gerekiyor.
Apologies. I cannot hear the president. I lost his voice. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. This is the interpreter speaking. I cannot hear the president. His voice is gone. His voice is gone. We cannot hear him. Me and my colleague, we cannot hear the president. Apologies for this, but we're having a technical glitch here. We cannot hear the president. We stopped being able to hear him. His voice is gone completely. Sorry, but we cannot hear the president. His voice is gone completely. We stopped being able to hear him. And right next to our booth, we have colleagues from, we believe, the Brazilian delegation, the Portuguese booth, and I can see them from the window. They cannot hear the floor either. We cannot hear the floor. We cannot
Je remercie le président de la Turquie. Je donne maintenant la parole au président du Brésil.
I give the floor now to the President of Brazil.
I would like to commend President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman for leading this important process and event. The question of Palestine arose when the General Assembly adopted the so-called petition plan 78 years ago. The session in which it was approved was chaired by Brazilian Osvaldo Aranha. On that occasion, the two-state perspective was born, but only one materialized. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is the paramount symbol of the obstacles faced by multilateralism. It shows how the tyranny of the veto sabotages the very reason for the UN's existence of avoiding atrocities like the ones that motivated its founding from happening again. It also goes against its universal vocation, blocking the admission as a full member of a state whose creation derives from the authority of the General Assembly itself. A state is based on three pillars: territory, population, and government. All have been systematically undermined in the Palestinian case. How can we talk about territory in the face of an illegal occupation that grows with each new settlement? How do you keep a population in the face of the ethnic cleansing we are witnessing in real time? And how do you build a government without empowering the Palestinian Authority? As the Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territories pointed out, there is no more appropriate word to describe what is happening in Gaza than genocide. Therefore, Brazil decided to become a party to the case submitted by South Africa to the International Court of Justice. The terrorist acts committed by Hamas are unacceptable. Brazil was emphatic in condemning them. But the right to defense does not authorize the indiscriminate killing of civilians. Nothing justifies taking the lives or mutilating more than 50,000 children. Nothing justifies destroying 90% of Palestinian homes. Nothing justifies using hunger as a weapon of war, nor targeting starving people seeking help. 500,000 Palestinians do not have enough food, more than the population of Miami or Tel Aviv. Hunger does not afflict the body only, it shatters the soul. What is happening in Gaza is not only the extermination of the Palestinian people, but an attempt to annihilate their dream of a nation. Both Israel and Palestine have the right to exist. Working to achieve a Palestinian state means correcting an asymmetry that compromises dialogue and obstructs peace. We salute the countries that recognize Palestine, as Brazil did in 2010. We are already the vast majority of the 193 members of the UN. Brazil commits to strengthening controls on imports from illegal settlements in the West Bank and maintaining a suspension of exports of defense materials, including dual-use materials that could be used in crimes against humanity and genocide. Given the Security Council's failure to act, the General Assembly must exercise its responsibility. We support the creation of a body inspired by the Special Committee Against Apartheid, which played a central role in ending the South African racial segregation regime. Securing Palestine's right to self-determination is an act of justice and an essential step toward restoring the strength of multilateralism and recovering our collective sense of humanity. Thank you very much.
Je remercie le président du Brésil. Je donne à présent la parole au président du Portugal.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Monsieur le Président de la République française,
President of the French Republic,
the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mr. President of the Palestinian State, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Portugal formally recognized the State of Palestine as a sovereign state with full rights. This decision reflects our conviction that the two-state solution is the only viable path for a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. By reaffirming it here, Portugal seeks to contribute to a broader international effort towards peace, justice, and stability. If we do not act, the crisis will leave scars for generations, fueling extremism and further instability. So, humanitarian access must be ensured without delay. All hostages must be released. Terrorism like October the 7th can never be justified, and civilians, regardless of nationality, religion, or ethnicity, must be protected at all times, and therefore a ceasefire must be attained immediately. Portugal's commitment to peace in the Middle East has been constant and clear. We have always defended the two-state solution in line with the United Nations resolutions and the 67 borders. We supported Palestine's observer status in 2012, voted to enlarge its rights in the Assembly in 2024, and endorsed the New York Declaration earlier this year. We welcome the unprecedented commitments made by the Palestinian Authority in the context of the New York Declaration. We recognize that both countries continue to face security threats, which must be addressed through dialogue, cooperation, and the pursuit of a just and lasting peace. Portugal's recognition of the State of Palestine is not an isolated gesture, but a continuation of a long-standing policy and a decisive contribution to the safeguarding of the two-state solution. Excellencies, Portugal stands ready to work actively towards this collective endeavor. Our message is clear. Recognition of the State of Palestine is recognition of peace itself. Now, today, tomorrow would have been too late. Thank you.
I thank the President of Portugal. I now give the floor to the President of Indonesia.
His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as the co-chairs of this distinguished meeting. Co-chairs, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the United Nations, I wish to extend our deepest appreciation and highest regards to the governments of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this important deliberation. It is with a heavy heart that we recall the ongoing unbearable tragedy in Gaza. Thousands of innocent lives, many of them women and children, have been killed. Famine looms. Human catastrophe is unfolding with our eyes. We condemn all acts of violence against innocent civilians. Therefore, it is today with dignity that we gather to take our historical responsibility. This responsibility speaks not only to the fate of Palestine, but also to the future of Israel, and also the very credibility of the United Nations. We condemn all violence against innocent civilians. Therefore, Indonesia once again reiterates its commitment to the two-state solution in the Palestine problem. Only this two-state solution will lead to peace. We must guarantee statehood for Palestine, but Indonesia also declares that once Israel recognizes the independence and the statehood of Palestine, Indonesia will immediately recognize the state of Israel, and we will support all guarantees for the security of Israel. The New York Declaration has provided a peaceful and just pathway towards peace. Statehood must mean peace. Recognition must mean a real chance towards lasting peace. It must be a real peace for all sides, for all parties. Distinguished Excellencies, we commend the leading states of the world that have taken this principled step. France, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, Portugal, and many other leading countries of the world have taken a step on the right side of history. The recognition of the state of Palestine is the right step on the right side of history. To those who have yet to act, we say, history does not stand still. We must recognize Palestine now. We must Stop the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Ending the war must be our utmost priority. We must overcome hatred, fear. We must overcome suspicion. We must achieve the peace that is necessary for the human family. We are ready to take our part in this journey towards peace. We are willing to provide peacekeeping forces. Thank you very much. Peace. Peace now. Peace immediately. We need peace. Thank you very much.
Je remercie le président de l'Indonésie. Je donne à présent la parole au président du Sénégal.
Le discours qu'ils n'ont pas déposé. Messieurs les co-présidents, chers collègues,
Co-chairs, dear colleagues,
le secrétaire général des Nations
Secretary
Unies,
General of the
mesdames,
United
messieurs,
Nations, ladies and gentlemen,
je salue
I commend the leadership of France and Saudi Arabia. And I commend the commitment of all here present to the Palestinian cause. This conference is being held at a time when the world's conscience has been shaken to its very core by the indefensible situation in Gaza. That situation has gone beyond all limits. We are witnessing an indescribable tragedy bearing all the hallmarks of ethnic cleansing. In the face of such inhumanity, on such scale, to say nothing, to do nothing is not an option. That choice would even be passive complicity. We are here to recall the very meaning of the founding principles of the United Nations, the sovereignty of peoples, equality of rights, peace through justice, the respect of international law, and the protection of civilians, even in times of war. These are all values that have today been annihilated and which now lie under Gaza's rubble. Senegal reaffirms its unwavering commitment to a two-state solution, with Palestine and Israel living side by side, each within safe and internationally recognized borders. That was the goal of the partition plan for Palestine decided upon by the United Nations. This is also a demand stand for peace and security for the peoples of the two countries. This is a call for justice and humankind. It is for this reason that Senegal supports the outcome document of our meeting prepared by the ministerial conference held last July. My country at that conference co-chaired the round table on compliance with international law. To make a difference, we must together send out a clear message. The occupation must cease. The suffering of civilians must cease. We must work towards an immediate ceasefire. Israel must stop its bombing and authorize the delivery of humanitarian aid by the United Nations. The United Nations must consider deploying a stabilization and observation mission to guarantee that Israel's illegal actions stop. In brief, the promise of two states must finally be fulfilled. In this connection, I commend the recent adoption by the UN General Assembly of a resolution for a peaceful two-state solution that was adopted by an overwhelming majority. The Senegal also commended the historic decision taken by countries that have today decided to recognize the state of Palestine. As chair of the Committee on the Exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, Senegal will continue to get on board with any initiative aimed at fostering the return of a lasting peace to Palestinian lands. I appeal here to the world's conscience. Here, we're not looking to pit one side against another or to choose between them, but what we're looking to do here is to defend life, to ensure the voice of reason and law can ring out, and to preserve what makes our common humanity, that is, our capacity for empathy, justice and solidarity. It is time to take tangible measures to create a viable Palestinian state. I thank you.
Je remercie le président du
I thank the President of Senegal.
Je donne à présent la parole au prince souverain de Monaco.
To the Sovereign Prince of Monaco.
Cher co-président,
dear co-chairs,
Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée générale,
President of the General Assembly,
Monsieur le Secrétaire général des Nations Unies,
Secretary General of the
Excellences,
United
Mesdames et
Nations,
Messieurs,
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
je remercie la France et
I
le
wish to
Royaume
thank
d'Arabie
France and the
Saoudite de
Kingdom
nous
of
avoir
Saudi
conviés
Arabia
à cette
for having
conférence.
convened this conference and invited us to it.
Toujours,
Since
notre
the
voix,
very
la voix de la
beginning,
Principauté de
we
Monaco
have
s'est élevée
spoken
pour
out as the
défendre deux
Principality
droits
of Monaco
indissociables.
loud and clear to defend
d'Israël à vivre en
indissociable rights, that of
sécurité dans
Israel
des
to
frontières
live
sûres et reconnues,
within safe and recognized
celui du
borders
peuple
and to
palestinien
enjoy
à disposer
security
d'un État
therein, and the
souverain,
right of the
viable
Palestinian
et
people
démocratique.
to have a sovereign, viable and democratic
Aujourd'hui, nous
state.
voulons réaffirmer
Today,
notre
we
soutien
wish to reaffirm
indéfectible
our
à l'existence
unwavering
d'Israël.
support to Israel's
Et nous voulons
existence,
aussi
and we also wish
reconnaître à la
to
Palestine la
recognize
qualité d'État en
Palestine
droit
as a
international,
state
ce que je fais
under
devant vous.
international law. That is what I'm doing here before you now.
Le 7 octobre 2023,
The 7th of
est le point de
October
départ dans toute son
2023
horreur
was
du chaos
in its
actuel.
full horror the starting
devient
point of
plus
the
urgent
current
que jamais de
chaos. It is
progresser
now
dans une
more
solution concrète,
more urgent than ever
équilibrée et
before to
durable,
move towards a
fondée sur la
tangible,
reconnaissance
balanced and
mutuelle
sustainable solution
et le
based
respect
on
des
mutual
droits
recognition
fondamentaux.
and the respect for
Dès que
fundamental
tous les
rights.
otages ont
This
été
as soon
libérés
as all
et que
hostages
le
have
Hamas
been
aura été
released
désarmé.
and as soon as Hamas has been disarmed.
La paix ne peut plus rester une
Peace, a
perspective
peace rather,
lointaine.
cannot remain a
Elle doit
dim
s'incarner dans
prospect on
des
the distant
institutions,
horizon. It must be
dans des
given its
garanties mutuelles
lifeblood in
et dans le respect
institutions
effectif
with mutual
des droits de
guarantees
chacun.
and ensuring the
La Principauté
effective
de Monaco,
respect
consciente de
for
sa place dans le
everyone's
concert des
rights.
nations,
The Principality of Monaco
continue
is aware of
d'affirmer
its
que seule
place in
une
the House of
solution fondée
Nations.
sur
We
deux
continue
entités
to affirm that
nationales
only
vivant
a
côte à
solution
côte,
based on
dans la dignité
the
et le
existence of
respect
two national
mutuel,
entities living side by
ouvrira
side
la
in
voie
dignity
à une
and mutual
stabilité
respect will
durable.
pave the way towards lasting
La
stability.
paix ne se décrète pas,
Peace
elle se
cannot be
construit
issued by
par une
decree.
volonté
It
commune.
is built
Je vous
through
remercie.
common will. Thank you.
Je remercie le prince souverain de Monaco.
thank the Sovereign Prince of
Je donne à
Monaco.
présent la
I give
parole
the
à mon
floor
homologue, son Altesse
to
le prince Faisal bin Farham Al Saoud.
Prince Faisal bin Al Saud.
شكرا.
Thank you. I give the floor to His Excellency, the President of South Africa.
Your Excellencies, would like to thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this very crucial conference. This is a moment of great significance, not only for the people of Palestine, not only for the people of Israel, but for all people who cherish the ideals of freedom and self-determination. Shortly after the United Nations was created, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, which recommended the creation of two states, Israel and Palestine. Immediately after the adoption of this resolution, only one state was created, the State of Israel, casting and ushering the Palestinians into a decades-long wilderness of statelessness, characterized by decades of occupation and now genocide. I'd like to congratulate the President of France, President Macron, for today announcing a very bold decision to support the long overdue creation and the recognition of the sovereign state of Palestine. President Macron, I stand here to congratulate you and to congratulate others who have taken this step. South Africa reiterates its firm commitment to the creation of a contiguous Palestinian state existing peacefully side by side with the State of Israel along the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. South Africa condemned the 7th October attacks by Hamas that resulted in the deaths of more than 1,200 people. In response to this attack, Israel has unleashed disproportionate punishment against the people of Palestine. And we say here today that the only solution to this conflict is a two-state solution. The viability of a two-state solution depends on full and universal respect for international law. All states, including the State of Israel, must comply with the collective obligations under international law. As the UN marks the 80th anniversary, we call on all member states to recognize Palestine and to act in solidarity with its people. To restore the prospects of a two-state solution, we call, firstly, for global recognition of Palestine and its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Secondly, the immediate ceasefire and an end to the genocide and the release of hostages by Hamas and prisoners by Israel. Thirdly, the full respect for international law, including the respect for UN resolutions and opinions and the decisions of the International Court of Justice. Fourthly, the removal of obstacles to the two-state solution, including a halt to illegal settlements and removal of the separation wall. Lastly, the restoration of the humanitarian aid and reconstruction of Gaza. This is a conflict that has gone on for almost as long as the United Nations has existed. And we say that as the international community, this conflict must end now, and we as the international community must act now also in unison. We must now work together to achieve a just and peaceful and lasting solution. I would like to welcome the demonstrable groundswell of support for the establishment of the much-awaited state of Palestine by 142 nations.
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank His Excellency the President of South Africa. والآن نعطي الكلمة لفخامة رئيس
His Excellency President of Angola.
Sua Excelência Emmanuel Macron,
Your Excellency Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic, Your Excellency Sheikh Faisal Al Saud, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, co-chairs of this special session, Excellencies, I would like to welcome the holding of this important international conference, which confirms the commitment of the United Nations member states to the urgent search for a peaceful, just and lasting solution to one of the most complex conflicts on the planet and the oldest in the Middle East. A special mention should be made to the French Republic and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which have committed themselves very firmly and tirelessly in conducting this initiative. His Excellencies, in the context of this meeting, the New York Political Declaration on Peaceful Resolution of the Issue of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution adopted on September 12 this year by the United Nations General Assembly assumes unquestionable relevance as it demonstrated that there is an increasingly growing international consensus on the need to end the war in Gaza based on the effective implementation of the two-state solution. This conflict, which lasted for decades and has an unusual level of violence, will not be resolved, as all evidence shows, by resorting to weapons, no matter how sophisticated they may be. The international community, which is increasingly aware of this fact, must use urgently all means at its disposal to convince the belligerents that the only way out of this situation is through dialogue to achieve a definitive peace based on the creation of a state of Palestine and peaceful coexistence between the two peoples. This is the position of the African Union, which also includes the principle that the East Jerusalem should be the capital of the independent and sovereign state of Palestine, and the Republic of Angola is unconditionally aligned with the African Continental Organization in this effort, in which we all are committed to the definitive resolution of this conflict. Excellencies, we are following with deep concern the alarming reports about the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, where entire communities, including many children, succumb daily to hunger and survive in subhuman conditions. Africa in general, and the Republic of Angola in particular, we have a firm position of condemnation of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and within this principle, we condemned the action that results in the death and kidnapping of a large number of people in Israel by Hamas. Therefore, we demand their urgent and unconditional release as a step towards creating the necessary condition for dialogue. Along with our unequivocal condemnation of this act of deliberate violence
violence perpetrated against Israel civilians by Hamas, we also repudiate the disproportionate reaction of the State of Israel with the use of fighter jets, bombers, tanks, and heavy artillery against not conventional army, but against defenseless civilian population of Palestine, journalists, medical personnel, employees of United Nations and humanitarian organizations, agencies under the pretext of persecuting Hamas. We also condemned pelo seu caráter profundamente desumano e dificilmente justificável. É urgente que, em presença deste drama, lancemos apelo à suspensão imediata de medidas que obstruam e ponham em causa os direitos fundamentais de milhões de palestinos, incluindo o direito à vida, à assistência médica e à alimentação. Vemos com muita preocupação os atos de guerra realizados de forma seletiva por Israel em vários países da região, em total respeito das normas do direito internacional e dos princípios e valores da Carta das Nações Unidas, que não produzem outro efeito que não seja o de levar a um recrudescimento da tensão e da instabilidade no Médio Oriente por destruir as perspectivas de resolução do conflito pela via do diálogo e da negociação.
Excellencies, the Republic of Angola, in an act of coherence and historic anticipation, formally recognize.
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
أشكر فخامة رئيس أنغولا.
I thank His Excellency President of Angola.
الآن أعطي
And I now give the floor
معالي
to
رئيس الحكومة في
the
أستراليا.
Prime Minister of Australia.
President Macron, Your Royal Highness, Secretary General, colleagues. In 1947, Australia was proud to be the first member of the United Nations to vote for the plan that made the modern state of Israel possible. But that plan always encompassed two states, a state of Israel and a state of Palestine, living side by side within internationally recognised borders, recognising each other's right to live in peace and security. 8 decades ago, those hopes were consumed by conflict, and that has been the grim pattern over the years. Opportunities not taken, compromises rejected, good faith betrayed, a cycle of violence that has crushed generations. We saw that in the horrific events of October 7, 2023. Hamas terrorists descending on a festival promoting friends, love and infinite freedom to perpetrate atrocities. One Australian, Galit Carbone, was among those killed. Australia embraces all who carry the weight of grief. We repeat our call for the hostages to be returned immediately and with dignity. And we stand with Jewish people everywhere who feel the cold shadow of history's darkest chapter in any act of anti-Semitism. Throughout this conflict, Australia has supported calls for a ceasefire because every innocent life matters. Every Israeli life, every Palestinian life. Right now, Gaza is in the grip of a humanitarian catastrophe, and the Israeli government must accept its share of responsibility. Tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. Desperate people, including children, denied vital aid. Aid workers killed, including Australian Zomi Frankham. Journalists killed trying to bring the truth to light. This comes alongside the continued illegal expansion of settlements on the West Bank and an increase in settler violence. Threats to annex parts of Palestine and permanently displace the Palestinian people. Such conduct risks putting a two-state solution beyond reach. That is where the current road leads. We must choose a different path. We must break this cycle of violence and build something better. Yesterday, Australia recognised the state of Palestine. We have been clear. The terrorist organisation Hamas can have no role in Palestine's future. Our recognition was predicated on commitments from the Palestinian Authority, reaffirming Israel's right to exist in peace and security, that Hamas turn over its weapons to Palestinian security forces and never controls Gaza again, and the PA must demilitarise, hold democratic elections and undertake wholesale reform to governance, finance and education. The leadership of the Arab League has added strength to these commitments. Their demand for Hamas to surrender its weapons and end its rule in Gaza has helped create this historic opportunity, a chance to deliver self-determination for Palestine in a way that permanently disarms Hamas and drives them from the region once and for all. Recognising the aspirations of the Palestinian people is about more than a seat, a voice and a vote in the councils of the world. It is about real hope for a place to call home. This is the same hope that sustained generations of Jewish people, the same hope that binds us all to our countries and cultures and drives us to want a better life for our children. Working together, we can build a future where instead of children in Gaza dying in pain, living in fear or being taught to hate, they can go to school and build a life in larger freedom. That future depends on recognition being followed by reconstruction and reform. A credible, cooperative peace plan supporting recovery in Gaza and security for Israel. Establishing governance and excluding Hamas on the day after and every day after that. This is the next step we must take, and we must take it together. I thank you very much.
أشكر دولته على مداخلته.
I would like to thank
الآن أعطي الكلمة لدولة رئيس الوزراء في جمهورية مصر العربية فليتفضل.
The Prime Minister of Egypt.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فخامة السيد الرئيس إيمانويل ماكرون رئيس جمهورية فرنسا، سمو الأمير فيصل بن فرحان وزير خارجية المملكة العربية السعودية، معالي السيد أنطونيو غوتيريش سكرتير عام الأمم المتحدة، السيدات والسادة، اسمحوا لي بداية أن أشيد بالجهد الذي بذلته المملكة العربية السعودية وجمهورية فرنسا لتنظيم هذا المؤتمر الهام الذي يجسد التزامنا الجماعي بحل الدولتين كسبيل وحيد لتحقيق السلام العادل والشامل في الشرق الأوسط. وإنني أتوجه إليكم باسم مصر التي قادت على مدار أكثر من 40 عاماً جهود إرساء السلام العادل والاستقرار في الشرق الأوسط. لأؤكد اليوم وأكثر من أي وقت مضى أنه لا استقرار في الشرق الأوسط بدون حل عادل وشامل يلبي الطموح المشروع للشعب الفلسطيني في قيام دولة دولته المستقلة على خطوط الرابع من يونيو 1967 وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية. ولنقولها بمنتهى الصراحة، إن حل الدولتين ليس مجرد خيار سياسي أو التزام أخلاقي فحسب، بل هو أيضا ضرورة أمنية. فالطريق الوحيد لشرق أوسط آمن ومستقر ومزدهر هو ضمان حق الشعب الفلسطيني في الحرية والكرامة والاستقلال، كما أن الأمن لن يتحقق لإسرائيل عبر القوة العسكرية ومحاولة فرض الأمر الواقع. فتجاهل الحقوق الفلسطينية لن يجلب سوى المزيد من التصعيد وعدم الاستقرار، كما أن غياب الأفق السياسي سيفتح الباب للمزيد من العنف والتطرف، وهو ما ثبت من التطورات المتلاحقة التي شهدتها منطقتنا في العامين الأخيرين. ويهمني أن أؤكد هنا إدانة مصر الكاملة للعدوان الإسرائيلي المستمر على الأراضي الفلسطينية وفي مختلف أنحاء المنطقة، وصولا إلى السابقة الخطيرة لقصف دولة قطر الشقيقة التي تشارك مع مصر في جهود الوساطة لإنهاء العدوان على قطاع غزة واستعادة الاستقرار. السيدات والسادة، إن اعتماد الجمعية العمومية الجمعية العامة للإعلان نيويورك يمثل لحظة تاريخية لتجديد التزام المجتمع الدولي بالعمل على تلبية حق الشعب الفلسطيني في الحصول على دولته المستقلة. وتأمل مصر أن يشهد مؤتمرنا هذا اعترافا فوريا وواسعا غير مشروط بدولة فلسطين من جانب الدول التي لم تقدم على هذه الخطوة بعد. غير أن المطلوب منا اليوم هو أن نبني على هذه التطورات من خلال خطوات عملية تتيح إعادة إطلاق عملية سلام حقيقية بأفق زمني محدد للوصول لحل عادل ومستدام على أساس مقررات الشرعية الدولية المعترف بها. إن مصر مستمرة في بذل كل الجهد للتوصل لوقف إطلاق النار في قطاع غزة، وهي تؤمن بوضوح أن التوصل لوقف إطلاق النار وإنهاء حمام الدم في غزة أمر ممكن بقدر ما هو واجب وضروري. ولعل التقرير الخاص بلجنة التحقيق الدولية المستقلة التابعة للأمم المتحدة يدق ناقوس الخطر ويوقظ كل ضمير إنساني، فقد كانت نتائجه واضحة في تأكيد ارتكاب إسرائيل جريمة الإبادة الجماعية ووقوع ركنيها المادي والمعنوي بحق المدنيين الفلسطينيين في غزة. السيدات والسادة، أؤكد أن مصر ترفض بصورة حاسمة أي محاولات لتهجير الشعب الفلسطيني وتصفية قضيته، وهو ما يرقى إلى جريمة التطهير العرقي. ومن هنا ستقوم مصر بمجرد التوصل لوقف إطلاق النار باستضافة المؤتمر الدولي لإعادة الإعمار في قطاع غزة لحشد التمويل اللازم للخطة العربية الإسلامية لإعادة الإعمار بالتنسيق مع الحكومة الفلسطينية، بما يضمن بقاء الشعب الفلسطيني على أرضه ومساعدته على تجاوز الخسائر الجسيمة التي سببها العدوان. وإنني أدعو كل شركائنا في المجتمع الدولي للمساهمة في هذا الجهد للتعافي المبكر ولإعادة الإعمار بوصفه جزءا لا يتجزأ من أي تحرك جدي لتحويل حل الدولتين إلى واقع ملموس. السيدات والسادة، إننا نقف اليوم أمام لحظة فارقة، فإما أن نؤسس لسلام عادل ودائم يفتح أبواب الأمل لشعوبنا، أو نترك المنطقة رهينة
The sound was cut off.
I
would like to thank His Excellency the Prime Minister for his statement and give the floor to the Prime Minister of Spain.
Excelencias,
Si el reconocimiento del Estado de Palestina es urgente,
whilst the recognition of a
lo es aún más que
Palestinian
exista un
state
pueblo
is
palestino
urgent,
en el
it
Estado
is
que
all the more
pretendemos
urgent that
reconocer.
there exists a Palestinian people in the
Lamentablemente,
state that we're claiming to
el pueblo palestino
recognize,
está
and
siendo
regrettably the
aniquilado.
Palestinian people are being
Por eso,
annihilated.
en nombre de
For
la
this reason,
razón,
in the
en
name
nombre
of
del derecho
reason,
internacional,
in the name of
y en
international
nombre de la
law,
dignidad
and
humana,
in the name of human
tenemos que
dignity,
parar esta
we
matanza
have to
ya.
stop this slaughter
En este preciso
now.
momento,
At
las
this
bombas
precise
siguen
moment,
cayendo
bombs continue to fall
indiscriminadamente sobre la
indiscriminately
población
on the
gazatí,
civilian
y el
population
hambre
in
mata
Gaza.
a mujeres,
Hunger is killing
ancianos
women,
y a
older
niños.
persons, and children.
Hoy
Today,
damos un paso
we
crucial
take
al
a crucial
reivindicar
step
la
forward in
solución de los dos
calling
estados
for
en
a
esta conferencia.
two-state solution
Pero
at
seamos
this
claros,
conference. But
no
let
hay
us
una
be
solución posible
lucidly
cuando la
clear. There is
población de
no
uno de
solution
esos dos
possible when the
estados es
population of
víctima
one of those two
de un
states
genocidio.
is the victim of a genocide.
Todos sabemos
We are all
que la única
well aware
esperanza de
that
los
the
civiles
only
en
hope
Gaza
that
es
civilians
saber
in Gaza
que el
have
mundo
is
no
that
les olvida.
knowing that the
Y
world
esta
does not
conferencia
forget them,
alimenta
and
esa
this
esperanza.
conference
Es un
nurtures
acto de
that hope. It
rebeldía
is an
moral
act of
ante la
moral
indiferencia
rebellion and
y ante el
uprising
olvido.
against
Por
indifference
tanto, hagamos
and
de ella también
forgetfulness.
un
Let us
compromiso
make this
colectivo para
conference too
frenar
a
la
collective
barbarie
commitment
y
to
abrir un
haltering
camino de paz.
brutality and to paving the way for
Excelencias,
peace.
esta conferencia marca un hito
Excellencies, this
trascendental,
conference marks
pero no es el final del
a
camino,
monumental
solo
step
es,
forward, but it is
debe
not
ser
the
el
end of the
principio.
road.
Por
It is
eso quiero hacer
only
dos
is and
propuestas.
can only be the
La
beginning.
primera es que
As
el
such, I
Estado de
want to make two
Palestina debe ser
proposals. First, the
miembro
state
de
of
pleno
Palestine
derecho
must be a
en
fully
Naciones
fledged
Unidas.
member of the
Se
United
debe
Nations.
completar lo antes
As soon
posible
as
el
possible, we
procedimiento de
must
ingreso
conclude
del
the
Estado de
procedure
Palestina en
to
esta organización
admit the state of
en pie de
Palestine to this
igualdad
organization
con el
on an
resto de
equal
estados.
footing with
Y
the
en
rest
segundo lugar,
of
tenemos
states
que adoptar
herein.
con carácter
Secondly, we
inmediato
have to
medidas para frenar
immediately
la
adopt
barbarie
measures to
y
halt
hacer
the
posible la
brutality
paz.
and make peace
España,
possible.
por
Spain,
supuesto, adoptará un
of
plan
course,
con
will
medidas para
adopt a
frenar el
plan with
genocidio en
measures
Gaza
to halt the
y
genocide
seguiremos
in
tomando
Gaza. We will
medidas
continue
valientes
to
con
take
quienes
brave
quieran
measures,
sumarse,
shoulder to shoulder,
porque Gaza
with anyone who
lo
wishes to
necesita.
join us, because Gaza needs
Excelencias,
it.
la historia nos
Excellencies,
juzgará
history will
y su
judge
veredicto
us,
será
and its
implacable con
verdict
quienes
will
perpetraron
be
esta
brutal
barbarie
with those
y
that
con quienes
perpetrated
callaron
this
o
slaughter
miraron
and
hacia
with
otro lado.
those who remained
Tomemos
silent
partido
or
por la
turned a
racionalidad,
blind
por la
eye.
diplomacia,
We
por
need
el
to take a
respeto al
step
derecho
forward so
internacional
that
y al
reason
derecho
can
internacional
prevail for
humanitario,
diplomacy, for
por
the
el
respect for
sentido común
international law,
y
for
por el
IHL, for
humanitarismo
common
más
sense,
básico.
and the most
Hagamos
basic
que este
values that
22
we
de
hold as
septiembre sea
humankind.
recordado
Let us
como
make the
el
22nd
primer
of
gran paso.
September the day that we
Hoy más que
remember
nunca
as the first
que lo
major
injusto
step
no lo
forward.
sea indiferente.
Today,
Nada
more
más
than
y
ever
muchas
before, we cannot be indifferent to injustice. Thank you.
أشكر دولته على مداخلته والآن أعطي الكلمة
I thank the President of the Government of Spain for his statement, and I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Canada.
Your Excellency, Monsieur le Président de la France, Your Excellency Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud. Since 1947, it has been the policy of every Canadian government to support a two-state solution for lasting peace in the Middle East. This position envisioned the creation of a sovereign, democratic, and viable state of Palestine, building its future in peace and security alongside the State of Israel. Over many decades, Canada's commitment to this goal was premised on the expectation that this outcome would be eventually achieved as part of a negotiated settlement. Regrettably, this possibility has been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people, culminating in the heinous attack of October 7th. The accelerated building of settlements across the West Bank and East Jerusalem and the soaring settler violence against Palestinians. Actions such as the E1 settlement plan and the Israeli government's contribution to the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Le Hamas a terrorisé le peuple israélien et opprimé le peuple de Gaza, ce qui a engendré d'horribles souffrances. Le Hamas doit impérativement libérer tous les otages, se désarmer complètement et ne jouer aucun rôle dans la gouvernance future de la Palestine.
governance of Palestine.
Hamas has stolen from the Palestinian people, chased them and cheated them from their life and liberty, and it can in no way dictate their future. But, Excellencies, the current Israeli government is working methodically to prevent the prospect of a Palestinian state from ever being established. Il poursuit sans relâche l'expansion des colonies
and tirelessly continues settlement expansion in the West Bank. That is illegal under international law.
Sa constante agression contre Gaza a fait des dizaines de milliers de morts civils,
claimed the lives of tens of thousands of civilians. It has compelled the displacement of more than 2 million people and caused a devastating famine. Another violation of international law.
And it is now the avowed policy of the current Israeli government that there will be, and I quote, no Palestinian state. In this context, Canada recognizes the state of Palestine and we offer our full partnership in building the promise of a peaceful future for both the state of Palestine and the state of Israel. Excellencies, Canada is under no illusions that this recognition is a panacea. This recognition is, however, firmly aligned with the principles of self-determination and fundamental human rights in the UN Charter, and it is fundamentally consistent with the policy of the Canadian government for generations. We take this action as part of a coordinated effort led by France and Saudi Arabia, a coordinated effort to provide the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. Recognizing the state of Palestine, led by the Palestinian Authority, empowers those who seek peaceful coexistence and the end of Hamas. It doesn't legitimize terrorism. And in no way does it compromise Canada's steadfast support for the state of Israel, its people, and their security, because that security can only be ultimately guaranteed through the achievement of a comprehensive two-state solution. Le Canada intensifiera les efforts qu'il déploie pour aider l'autorité palestinienne à mettre en œuvre
it needs to make to support the
d'effort.
Palestinian Authority in implementing its
Those in this room, with our international.
The microphone has been cut off.
أشكر دولة رئيس وزراء كندا. I thank the Prime Minister of Canada for his statement. I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Ireland.
Presidents, co-chairs, may I begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening us today, and I commend them for their leadership on this most vital of issues. Those of us gathered here know that the only viable option to deliver a peaceful future for Israel and for Palestine is a two-state solution. At this most critical juncture, we must continue to put our full political weight behind it. The situation on the ground has rarely looked so bleak. A just and lasting peace seems further away than it ever has. But in our own peace process in Northern Ireland, to a conflict of 24 years' duration, we recognised that even in the darkest of days, we had a duty as leaders to keep the flame of hope alive and to keep talking. The immense suffering of the Palestinian population in Gaza over the past 2 years has been an affront to the world. It has horrified people around the world, nowhere more than in Ireland, where people have been moved to sorrow and to anger. What happened to Israel on the 7th of October was a horrific and brutal attack on an innocent civilian population, and Hamas must be held to account for its actions. It was an appalling act of crime, war crime. But it cannot justify what has happened since. More than 65,000 people killed in Gaza. Horrifically, more than 20,000 of them children. The use of food as a weapon of war, with scarcity becoming hunger, becoming famine. Hospitals attacked, homes and schools destroyed, thousands of years of culture wiped out. People shot as they desperately seek food for their families. Doctors, aid workers, journalists targeted and killed. We have reached a point where what has been credibly described as a genocide is being carried out in front of the eyes of the world. It would be easy to just despair, but we must not. Gaza must move us to action. And there are still humanitarian workers, medics, journalists determined to do their best for the people of Gaza and for Palestine. They are doing so with the most extraordinary courage and without regard to their own safety. To honour them and the Palestinian people, it is right that we as political leaders play our part too. And the only way to end the appalling cycle of violence is to forge a political path. And the only credible destination is a two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. And that is why Ireland last year, with Spain, Norway and Slovenia, recognised the state of Palestine. I commend those who have taken the decision to recognise the state of Palestine this week, and I strongly urge those who have yet to do so to give it serious consideration. We know that there are people, including in the Israeli government, who are working daily to make that outcome impossible. In addition to the destruction of Gaza, settlements are expanding every day, and illegal settlers in the West Bank are increasingly emboldened and militant. If we do not move now to protect the two-state solution, if we do not work to build a process through which it can be achieved, there may never be another opportunity. That must not be our legacy to future generations. Ireland is ready to play its part, and I look forward to our continuing steadfast cooperation. Thank you very much indeed.
أشكر دولته على كلمته والآن أعطي الكلمة لرئيس حكومة بلجيكا.
Dear Secretary General, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Belgium has always defended the two-state solution and is today reaffirming once again this position by having joined the co-signatories of the New York Declaration. Only this solution will allow Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in peace and security. To support this aspiration, since the Oslo agreements, Belgium has provided bilateral funding and technical assistance to the Palestinians for a total amount of around 600 million euros. We also remain committed to meeting the acute humanitarian needs in Gaza. We have recently airdropped over 190 tons of humanitarian supplies to address the most acute needs. The Belgian government has recently decided to add another 12.5 million euros to our humanitarian budget for Gaza, in addition to what has already been disbursed. Full and free access to Gaza for providing massive humanitarian aid is an urgent need, as the famine has been officially recognized by the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, the resumption of settlement activities in the West Bank, particularly the E1 project, the military occupation aimed at the full occupation of Gaza, as well as the indescribable humanitarian crisis, all raise fears today that, in the absence of an international response confirming the need to keep the prospect of a Palestinian state alive, peaceful and sustainable coexistence in two states may no longer be possible. The recent declarations of a number of Israeli ministers, including the Prime Minister himself, that no state of Palestine will ever exist, is an additional reason for reaffirming the right and the need of the Palestinians having their own state. Therefore, Belgium is giving out a strong political and diplomatic signal to the world today by joining the group of countries that announces the recognition of the State of Palestine in the margin of this high-level week of the United Nations General Assembly. We are thus joining the initiative of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as advocated in the resolution adopted by the Belgian Parliament. Through this initiative, we continue to support international law, particularly the right to self-determination of peoples. Let me be clear, however, this step cannot be a reward for Hamas. Conscious of the trauma suffered after the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7, 2023, Belgium will proceed to the legal recognition of the State of Palestine once all hostages have been released and all terrorist organizations, such as Hamas, have been removed from the governance of Palestine. The effective conduct of diplomatic relations with the new State of Palestine, including the opening of a Belgian embassy and the conclusion of international agreements, will be carried out once the objectives of the New York Declaration have been achieved, notably the full demilitarization of Hamas and subsequent the renewal of governments based on presidential and parliamentary elections, giving the Palestinians a democratic, strengthened and renewed authority. All these steps are intended to guarantee the security of both the Israeli and Palestinian population. At the same time, we also strongly call for the recognition of the State of Israel by all Arab countries. Let us be clear, the two-state solution is not dead. It is bruised, but it can be revived, and it must be for the sake of both peoples. I thank you.
نشكر دولته والآن
We
أعطي
thank His
الكلمة
Excellency, and I now give the floor
لرئيس
to
الحكومة
His
النرويج
Excellency,
فليتفضل.
Prime Minister of Norway.
Excellencies, thank you, France and Saudi Arabia, for convening us together in New York today. I would also like to salute the President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas. I find it an illustration of deep injustice that he was denied entry to be with us today. But his address was reasonable and dignified. Thank you, Mr. President. 32 years ago, the first Oslo Accords were signed, forever creating an association between my country, my capital, and a vision for peace in the Middle East. Ever since, we have worked for one end: peace, security, and dignity for the Palestinians and the Israelis, living side by side in two sovereign states, enjoying the rights and obligations that follow from the Charter of the United Nations. I have followed this closely, now as Prime Minister, previously as Foreign Minister, and also as Secretary General of the Norwegian Red Cross. Today's conference marks a historical high point of international support for and recognition of the state of Palestine. At the same time, the situation on the ground is perhaps the furthest we have been from its realization. The situation in Gaza is catastrophic. The governance structures created by the Oslo Accords are driven to the verge of collapse, and the encroachment of Palestinian territory continues. Yes, it is complex, but it is true. The two-state solution is the only credible path to peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians. An occupying power cannot have a veto over what happens in a territory it is unlawfully occupying. The Palestinian people have the right to self-determination, as do the Israeli people. Last year, therefore, Norway, along with Spain and Ireland and Slovenia, recognized the State of Palestine. We welcome
We welcome the recognitions announced this week and last year and today. Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la décision de la France.
And thank you,
It sends
Mr.
an
President,
important
for France's
signal
decision.
underlying the urgent need to stop the violence, improve access to humanitarian assistance, release the hostages, and pave the way for a lasting solution based on the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Only last week, this Assembly approved a roadmap of concrete actions to this end. And in July, a broad majority voted the New York Declaration. But friends, there will be no state of Palestine or a body to govern Gaza the day after without functioning Palestinian authorities. Preserving and reforming the institutions that we together have invested in and helped build over the last 3 decades is critical. It is critical for the well-being of the Palestinian population and its desperate hour. And it is critical for peace and security also for Israel. The alternative is chaos or worse. It is the strongest rejection we can come up with of Hamas and terrorism to recognize a Palestinian state under the Charter of the United Nations. Norway will continue to support the Palestinian government, including through emergency funds we are mobilizing with other donors. And we continue to call on Israel to release the tax revenues owed to Palestine. These revenues are desperately needed to fund schools, hospitals, and the police. So, friends, this is a time to stand up and be counted. As defenders of human dignity and human rights, as defenders of a world with firm laws and rules, as defenders of peaceful resolutions. For 80 years, the UN has been a family of nations. The state of Palestine belongs to this family. Thank you.
أشكر دولته على كلمته
والآن أعطي الكلمة
لدولة رئيس الوزراء في لوكسمبورغ.
Prime Minister of Luxembourg.
Monsieur le Président, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in history when the cause of peace demands both moral clarity and political courage. 8 years ago was such a moment. The founding of the United Nations was an act of courage, guided by a clear vision of a world based on universal values and principles of peace, freedom, and justice. Today, again, is such a moment in history. Luxembourg stands here today as a partner to all those who believe that diplomacy still matters, that it can make a difference. We want to remain true to their promise made 8 years ago. Luxembourg stands here today as a partner for peace. We remain convinced that a two-state solution remains the only viable way forward for a lasting peace. Our goal is a safe and secure state of Israel living side by side with a safe and secure state of Palestine. Rarely has the prospect of a two-state solution felt more distant than today, and yet never has the international will to achieve it been more unified. When doubts grow, we must face them with the certainty of hope. That is why I solemnly declare that as of today, Luxembourg formally recognizes the state of Palestine. Recognition is not the end of a process. It is the beginning of a renewed commitment to hope, a commitment to diplomacy, to dialogue, to coexistence, and a two-state solution. To the idea, fragile but still possible, that peace can prevail. We take this step fully aware of its great symbolic weight. It is our contribution to a political process, one that we hope will revive the prospect of a negotiated two-state solution, grounded in the legitimate aspirations of both Palestinians and Israelis. It is fully aligned with the principles that have guided Luxembourg's foreign policy since 1945. Respect for international law, the promotion of a rules-based order, and the values enshrined in the UN Charter. And let me be clear, this is not a decision against Israel or its people, a people with which my country shares strong historic ties, and whose right to live in peace and security we have been fully upholding since 1948. Luxembourg has been and will remain a friend of the people of Israel and Jews around the world. And with the same clarity, let me say that this is not a decision to reward violence or endorse any actor who undermines peace. Luxembourg condemns, in the strongest possible terms, the atrocities of October 7, and we call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. And in line with the New York Declaration, we expect the Palestinian leadership to live up to the responsibilities of statehood. The road ahead will not be easy. We do not claim this recognition alone will change the course of the conflict, but we hope it will contribute to restoring momentum to the political horizon that has been lost. Peace is not simply declared. Real peace, lasting peace, is built step by step, brick upon brick. Let this recognition be a message to grieving families, to hopeful children, and to all those who have not yet given up. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency the Prime Minister and give the floor to the Prime Minister of Malta.
Excellencies, dear friends, let me begin by stating clearly and unequivocally that the Republic of Malta is proud to confirm our official recognition of Palestinian statehood. We do so as a demonstration of our concrete commitment to a genuine and peaceful two-state solution, as the only solution that will secure the future of both peoples. Malta is equally unequivocal in its support for the right of Israel to exist alongside a democratic Palestinian state. In making this commitment, I am acutely aware of how events have unfolded since the appalling Hamas attacks of October the 7th. They were the despicable work of a terrorist organization which must have no place in the emerging Palestinian state. Since then, Malta has been unwavering in calling for the unconditional release of all the remaining hostages. No ifs, no buts. The hostages must come home now. Malta adds once again its voice to those demanding an immediate and permanent ceasefire. The fighting must stop now. I am also aware of the opinion that recognizing the state of Palestine somehow amounts to a victory for Hamas. A two-state solution, however, is the worst possible outcome for Hamas. It is not what they want to see. They want to see Israel wiped off the map. Malta and our allies want to see Hamas wiped out. We must never forget that Hamas openly and violently opposed all the previous efforts at peace. If Palestinians can see a peaceful and realistic road to nationhood and self-determination, it fatally undermines the siren cries of Hamas. It offers the only hope that there is an alternative to conflict. I ask What is the other alternative? What is the future that the hotheads on both sides envisage? A conflict without end? Israel under constant attack? A region mired in instability? That is an outcome nobody should want. Instead, with the right to recognition come huge responsibilities for the Palestinian leadership. There must be absolute adherence from the outset to non-violence, and mutual recognition. Hamas must have no role in any shape or form in the future government of Palestine. Malta supports the Palestinians' authority, one state, one government, one law, one gun approach, and the need for urgent, free, and fair elections. Equally, there are urgent responsibilities for the Israeli government. The attacks on civilians and infrastructure must stop immediately. The illegal settler encroachment and accompanying violence in the West Bank must also stop immediately. And unhindered aid, under genuine international auspices, must be allowed to flow immediately. Starvation is being suffered in Gaza, and the deaths of hungry civilians trying to access the pitiful trickle of food aid being allowed in cannot be allowed to go on. I am not ashamed to admit that I cried after recently visiting the young children we brought over to Malta from Gaza to give them the best medical care our island has to offer and the required prosthesis. These innocent children have had their limbs and the best part of their life stolen away from them. They have also lost their parents, and they have been caused irreparable harm. But we will not allow their hope for a better future to be stolen away from them. And we will protect them. Ibrahim, I promised you that, and we will stick to our word. What is happening is morally and legally very wrong, and we have a duty on all of us to act. We know that the path to a functioning, free, and fair two-state solution is a long and also hard one. We know the dangers that lie along that path, but we also know the greater dangers that arise from saying nothing can be done, that the dream has died. We cannot and we will not remain silent or complacent. The depth of the current tragedy must be
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
أشكر دولته
I
والآن
thank
أعطي
His
الكلمة
Excellency for the
للاتحاد
statement, and
الأوروبي.
I give the floor to the representative of the EU.
Monsieur le Président, Altesse Royale, Excellences,
President, Your
je
Royal
veux
Highness,
remercier
Excellencies,
l'initiative de la France
I would like to
et
thank
d'Arabie Saoudite
the initiative of
de nous
France
réunir
and
à un moment
Saudi
critique pour la
Arabia, the
paix
initiative being
au
to
Moyen-Orient.
gather us at a
La
critical juncture
région
for peace
a
in the Middle
connu
East.
trop de guerres,
The region
trop de
has known
violence,
far too many wars,
trop de
far too much
terrorisme,
violence and
trop de morts.
terrorism, too many
Aujourd'hui,
deaths.
à Gaza,
Today, in
nous sommes
Gaza,
devant une catastrophe
we are facing
humanitaire
a
qui
humanitarian
défie
catastrophe.
des villes rasées, des familles brisées,
We see
la famine
families
utilisée
broken,
comme arme de guerre.
famine used
Et
as
ce
a
désastre
weapon of
doit
war.
cesser.
This disaster
L'Union
must
européenne
end.
appelle
The
une
European
nouvelle fois
Union
à un
once again
cessez-le-feu
calls
immédiat,
for an immediate
un accès
ceasefire,
humanitaire sans restriction
unfettered
et en
humanitarian
sécurité.
access, and an end to insecurity. We want the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. We condemn the military offensive underway in Gaza. We also firmly condemn the violent escalation in the West Bank. We call on Israel to put an end to the aforementioned operations, to stop the illegal settlements. Excellencies, today, thanks to the impetus provided by this conference, the State of Palestine has been recognized by the majority of EU member states. Nonetheless, we must be clear-eyed about the day after. There is no room for Hamas, for terrorism. There is no room for illegal settlements. There's no room for death of innocent civilians. Nowhere, neither in Gaza, nor in the West Bank, nor in East Jerusalem, nor in Israel. There's only one way forward, and that's the two-state solution. The State of Israel, secure and recognized by all members of this General Assembly, and the State of Palestine, democratic, independent, viable. Two states living side by side in peace. The time for peace has come, and we are duty-bound to live up to the times we face. I thank you.
Monsieur le Président, Royal Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, when the night is darkest, we must hold fast to our compass. And our compass is the two-state solution. October 7th has opened one of the darkest chapters in history. We all agree that the tragedy in Gaza must stop right now and all hostages released. But ending the war might not be enough if there is no pathway to peace, if the prospect of two states is no longer viable. And as we speak, the two-state solution is being undermined, and this cannot be, because the only realistic peace plan is based on two states, with a secure Israel, a viable Palestinian state, and the scourge of Hamas removed. Since the beginning of this war, Europe has been the lifeline of the Palestinian Authority. We have put together an unmatched and unprecedented financial package of 1.6 billion euros. But as the very survival of the Palestinian Authority is at stake, we must all do more. And this is why we will set up a Palestine donor group. Any future Palestinian state must be viable, also from the economic point of view. And this can be achieved also with the support of the Palestinians' neighbors. We Europeans will set up a dedicated instrument for Gaza's reconstruction in coordination with other donors' efforts. Gaza must be rebuilt, the Palestinian economy must be relaunched, and I invite all of you to join in the effort to make this happen. Of course, in the end, only the Israelis and the Palestinians can agree on the way forward. But the international community has so much to contribute. We can facilitate, we can rebuild, but most importantly, we can keep hope alive. Thank you very much.
شكرا على المداخلة.
I thank you for your statements. Given the limited remaining time, we ask the Excellencies to limit their statements to 2 minutes, after which the microphones will be cut off. I give the floor now to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy.
President Macron, Minister Faisal, this conference takes place at a crucial time. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Our position is clear. Italy is against the occupation of Gaza Strip and against any idea of displacement of its population. Italy condemns also the recent attack against Doha, but we encourage Doha to continue in the crucial effort to mediate together with Egypt and the United States to reach a ceasefire. We deplore the decision of the Israel government to expand settlements in the West Bank. We also condemn in the strongest terms, the recent terrorist attacks carried by Hamas against the Israeli civilian population in Jerusalem. We are fully convinced that a path to peace is still possible. Like Pope Leo said, we cannot abandon the hope for peace. Italy strongly supports the dream of the Palestinian people to have a state. We will continue to support the Palestinian Authority in its reform. We will work hard for two-state solutions with the peaceful coexistence of the Palestinians and Israelis. It is the only solution to ensure a future of peace and prosperity in the Middle East. For this goal, it's crucial to reach the ceasefire, the liberation of the hostages, and the assumption of full humanitarian access. From the beginning of the conflict, Italy provided thousands of tons of aid to the Palestinian population. We also organized medical evacuation to cure in Italy hundreds of Palestinian children. We know this is not enough. We must interrupt the cycle of violence. The message from New York is clear. Israel, stop bombing. Hamas, freedom immediately for the hostages. We must focus on the day after. It should meet
The microphone has been cut off.
Your Excellency. Minister. I thank His Excellency. وأعطي الكلمة الآن إلى معالي وزير خارجية الجزائر.
His Excellency Foreign Minister of Algeria.
شكرا للرئاسة المشتركة.
I thank the co-presidency of this conference.
ترحب الجزائر بائتئام مؤتمرنا هذا وهو ناتج عن إجماع دولي أصيل وهذا الإجماع هو الضامن الرئيسي لتسوية عادلة ودائمة ونهائية للصراع الإسرائيلي الفلسطيني وإن هذا الإجماع الدولي هو السد المنيع أمام السياسات الإسرائيلية التوسعية تحت غطاء خرافة إسرائيل الكبرى وإن هذا الإجماع الدولي هو أبلغ رد على أوهام الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وظنونه بأنه يمتلك وحده سلطة نقض قيام الدولة الفلسطينية على أرض فلسطين. لقد آن أوان التحرك الفعلي لتجسيد هذا الإجماع وفرضه على مستويات عدة. المستوى الأول وهو مستوى توسيع قاعدة الاعترافات الرسمية بدولة فلسطين كواقع دولي لا مرد له. المستوى الثاني وهو مستوى تمكين الدولة الفلسطينية من العضوية الكاملة بمنظمة هاته وهي العضوية التي ما فتئ ينادي بها ويرافع من أجلها رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون من هذا المنبر الأممي. والمستوى الثالث وهو مستوى التصدي دبلوماسيا وقانونيا وسياسيا واقتصاديا لمخططات الاحتلال الرامية لضم الأراضي الفلسطينية وتهجير الشعب الفلسطيني من أرضه التاريخية. أما المستوى الرابع والأخير فهو مستوى الداخل الفلسطيني المطالب برص صفه وتوحيد كلمته حتى يعيد لقراره استقلاليته ولتحركه قوته ولصوته تأثيره وصداه إقليميا ودوليا. شكرا لكم.
شكرا معالي الوزير.
I
والآن
thank His Excellency
أعطي
and I now
الكلمة
give the
لمعالي
floor
وزيرة الخارجية في المملكة
Her
المتحدة.
Excellency Foreign
وأود
Minister
التذكير
of the
مرة
United
أخرى
Kingdom, and
أن
I would like to
الوقت
remind you
المتاح
once again
دقيقتان
that
يقطع
you
بعده
have 2 minutes after which the
الميكروفونات.
microphone will be cut off.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Your Excellencies, President Macron and Prince Faisal. I stand before you today beneath the emblem of the United Nations to confirm the historic decision of the British government to recognise the State of Palestine. This step, alongside friends and partners, reflects a long-standing truth that statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people and that 2 states is the only path to security and lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. But it also reflects a grave reality. The 2-state solution that for decades has commanded global support is in profound peril. From continued bloodshed, man-made famine, terrorism and hostage-taking, settlement expansion and settler violence. And Hamas terrorists continue to hold hostages seized in the barbaric attack of October 7th, prolonging the unimaginable anguish of their families. And in Gaza, the unbearable humanitarian catastrophe worsens as the Netanyahu government chooses to escalate war and hold back aid. Children dying of starvation while food rots at the border. And settlement expansion threatens the very viability of a Palestinian state. The 2-state solution risks disappearing beneath the rubble. That is what extremists on all sides want, but we refuse to let hope be lost. Recognition is born of urgency and principle, alongside our unwavering support for the security of Israel and its people. This pathway is the opposite of Hamas's hateful vision, and this process around recognition has helped cement the rejection of Hamas across the Arab world, alongside new reforms to the Palestinian Authority, because there can be no role for Hamas in the future governance of Palestine. But recognition must be a spur, not a substitute for urgent action. A ceasefire now, the release of all hostages, the restoration of aid, and a lasting framework for peace. Recognition is about the future, but it is rooted in our past. 75 years ago, Britain was rightly proud to recognise the State of Israel. But the promise of upholding Palestinian rights has gone unfulfilled. For decades, my country supported a 2-state solution, but only recognised 1 state. That changes now, as we join more than 150 member states in recognising the State of Palestine and protecting the pathway to peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. أشكر معاليها
I
وأعطي
thank Her
الكلمة الآن
Excellency and
إلى
I
معالي
now
وزيرة
give the floor
خارجية
to
المكسيك.
the Foreign Minister of Mexico.
Señor Presidente, Excelencias, a todos nos preocupa y nos ocupa la grave crisis en Medio Oriente que requiere de acciones urgentes. Desde nuestra reunión en julio pasado se ha confirmado declaratoria de hambruna en Gaza y la Comisión Internacional Independiente que investiga en el territorio palestino ocupado concluyó que se ha cometido genocidio en la Franja de Gaza. Urgen acciones colectivas que pongan fin a esta desgarradora guerra. Se necesita un arreglo justo, pacífico y duradero basado en la implementación efectiva de la solución de dos estados que permita un futuro seguro y próspero para todos los países de la región. El respaldo de la Declaración de Nueva York por parte de la Asamblea General debe dar pie al establecimiento de los marcos políticos y de seguridad que puedan detener la crisis humanitaria, iniciar los trabajos de recuperación y reconstrucción y garantizar la seguridad a largo plazo de ambos estados. México reconoce las gestiones de todos los países mediadores para conseguir de inmediato un alto al fuego definitivo y la liberación de los rehenes y considera que una resolución justa, duradera y pacífica basada en el derecho internacional debe estar respaldada por narrativas que humanicen el problema, contrarresten la división y promuevan la aceptación del otro. Dicho
The microphone has been cut off.
Your Excellency, Mr. Minister, I would like to draw the attention of the Minister that his mic is no longer working. Gracias. Thank you, Excellency. والآن أعطي الكلمة لمعالي وزير
And I give the
خارجية
floor
اليابان.
to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Japan.
At the outset,
I wish to express my profound respect and sincere appreciation to France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this high-level conference. Together with Norway, we have had the honor of serving as co-chair of the working group on the economic viability of Palestine, engaging in sincere and constructive discussions with UN member states and international organizations. Urgent action is required to address the fiscal challenges facing the Palestinian Authority, sustain support for the PA, concerted engagement by the international community with Israel, and reforms undertaken by the PA itself. Japan continues to make tangible contributions, including recent financial assistance through the World Bank. Yet today, the situation has reached an extremely grave and alarming juncture that threatens to erode the very foundation of a two-state solution. The sharp deterioration of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the expansion of settlement activities in the West Bank, and steps toward annexations are completely unacceptable. Japan strongly condemns these actions and calls on Israel to immediately cease all such unilateral measures. At the same time, Hamas must release all hostages and disarm. Japan has consistently supported a two-state solution. For my country, the issue of recognizing a Palestinian state is not a matter of if, but of when. While carefully monitoring developments in the region, Japan will continue its comprehensive deliberations with even greater seriousness. Above all, what matters most is that Palestine can exist in a sustainable manner, living side by side in peace with Israel. Japan will continue to play a realistic and proactive role in advancing toward the goal of a two-state solution, even by single step. Should Israel take further actions that block the path to the realization of a two-state solution, Japan will be compelled to introduce new measures in response. Japan fully supports the aspirations of the Palestinian people to establish their own independent state.
would like to thank His Excellency and give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Andorra.
Messieurs les Présidents, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la
President,
situation à
Excellencies,
Gaza
ladies and
est
gentlemen,
devenue
the situation in
insoutenable.
Gaza has
Les
become
victimes civiles,
unbearable.
majoritairement des femmes et des
Civilian
enfants,
victims,
se comptent
mostly
par
women
dizaines de
and
milliers.
children, run
L'accès
into
à
the
l'aide
tens of
humanitaire est
thousands.
gravement entravé, érigeant la faim
Humanitarian
en arme
access
de
has been
guerre.
seriously
Les déplacements forcés
hindered.
ont pris des
Hunger is
dimensions
a
inouïes.
weapon of war.
Face à cette
Forced
tragédie
displacement
humaine,
has taken on
nous
outsized
réitérons notre appel à un
proportions.
cessez-le-feu
Faced with this human
immédiat
tragedy, we
et la
reiterate our
nécessité
call
de
for an
mettre
immediate
fin de
ceasefire
manière
and the
durable
need
à ce
to
terrible conflit.
ensure a
Un
lasting
conflit
end
dont
is
la seule
put
issue crédible,
on
mesdames
this
et
terrible
messieurs,
conflict.
est la solution
The
à
only
deux États.
credible path
Le
out of this
résultat
conflict,
du
ladies
vote
and
du
gentlemen,
12
is the
septembre dernier n'a pas
two-state
laissé
solution.
l'ombre d'un doute.
The 12
Cette
September
assemblée,
vote
à une écrasante
did not leave a
majorité,
shadow
considère
of a
que le
doubt.
peuple
This assembly,
palestinien
by
doit
an
pouvoir
overwhelming
vivre en
majority,
paix et en
believes
sécurité
that the
au
Palestinian
sein
people
d'un État
should live in
aux
peace and
côtés
security
d'Israël.
within their own state,
C'est fort
side by
de ce
side with
constat
the
largement
state of Israel.
partagé que le gouvernement
With
d'Andorre
this
a
widely
approuvé la
shared assessment in
reconnaissance
mind, the
de la
government of Andorra
Palestine.
approved the recognition of Palestine.
Nous continuons à appeler
We
avec
will continue
force à la
to
libération
forcefully
de
call
tous
for
les
the release
otages,
of all
au
hostages,
désarmement du Hamas,
for the
auteur
disarmament
des
of
attaques
Hamas,
atroces du 7
the
octobre
perpetrators of
2023
the
et
atrocious
à
7th
l'avènement
of
d'un
October
État
2023
palestinien
attacks, and for the
démilitarisé
advent of a
sous une
Palestinian
autorité
state that's been
réformée qui
demilitarized
exclut le Hamas.
and that
Lorsque
exists
ces
under
conditions
the
seront
reformed
réunies et si la pleine
authority of a
intégration
government that
régionale
excludes
d'Israël
Hamas,
est garantie,
when the
cette
conditions are in
reconnaissance
place and
prendra
if
tous
we can
ses
guarantee the
effets.
full regional integration
Avec
of
cette
Israel,
reconnaissance
this
de la
recognition
Palestine,
will
notre
take its
pays,
effect.
fier de ses plus
With
de
this
7
recognition of
siècles de
Palestine,
paix
our country,
ininterrompue,
which is proud of its
reste
over
fidèle
7
à la
centuries of
neutralité
uninterrupted
active,
peace,
résolument engagé dans le multilatéralisme, le
remains
respect du
committed
droit
to
international et
neutrality,
la protection de la
multilateralism. The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
à s'engager au
Your Excellency,
Bravo.
Okay, bravo. شكرا معاليك والآن
Thank you, Your Excellency. I give the floor now to the Deputy Prime Minister of Slovenia.
Your Excellencies, I would like to thank France and Saudi Arabia. A mutually agreed and sustainable two-state solution is the only viable path forward for peace in the Middle East. This cannot exist without a legitimate and capable Palestinian Authority which requires reforms but also international support. We cannot allow the region to revert to an ineffective state that leaves a vacuum. It is for these reasons I signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Palestine last month. The horrifying images of starving children in Gaza are the outcome of deliberate choices. This is a man-made catastrophe. Gaza is enduring what international law defines as genocide. This demands clarity of words and urgency of action. When brute force replaces law, it will not bring security. It will bring instability and radicalization for generations. We insist that law must apply equally to the powerful as to the weak. Slovenia has acted. We recognize Palestine together with Ireland, Norway, and Spain. We call for a permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and the protection of all civilians. We insist that humanitarian aid must flow into Gaza. We are at a turning point. We welcome the most recent recognitions and insist others must follow suit. History will not be kind to hesitation. It will not remember speeches that avoided difficult truths. It will unapologetically remember those who stood silent when genocide unfolded. Let this conference be remembered not as another echo chamber, but as the place where the international community finally moved from words to consequences. And
speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank Her Excellency and I give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Germany.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, across Gaza, people are living through hell on earth. Tens of thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands are starving. Colleagues, the horrendous terrorist attacks of October 7 and the most brutal war that followed have made it very clear. This decades-old conflict cannot be solved by terror, destruction, and death. It can neither be won nor managed. It needs to be resolved. We are well aware that today a two-state solution appears more distant than ever. We are well aware that steps are being taken as we speak to bring it further out of reach. We are meeting today because we are convinced there can be a better future. An independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state existing side by side and in peace and in security with Israel. A negotiated two-state solution in accordance with international law, one to which no convincing alternative has been presented so far. Colleagues, to bring that future closer, Germany is guided by three principles. First, we do not and will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed upon both parties. Second, we consider Israeli settlements in the occupied territories unlawful and a serious obstacle to peace. And third, we respect the IGC's advisory opinion of 19th July 2024 and act in line with its stipulations. My country will always be deeply committed to Israel's existence, which is still being questioned by some. My country will always be committed to Israel's long-term security.
Microphone has been cut off.
Herr Minister. Herr Minister. Herr Minister. Ja. Herr Minister, Ihr Mikrofon ist ausgeschaltet. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. شكرا معالي الوزير والآن أعطي الكلمة لوزير خارجية الدنمارك.
To the Foreign Minister of Denmark.
Thank you, President Macron and Prince Faisal bin Farhan, for your unwavering effort to push for momentum towards the two-state solution. Denmark has endorsed the New York Declaration and remained deeply committed to build on that momentum. Almost 2 years has passed since Hamas' appalling terrorist attack, and ever since, Denmark has repeatedly condemned the attack, and we continue to insist on the immediate and safe release of every hostage. In the meanwhile, the war in Gaza has created a humanitarian catastrophe of unbearable scale, and Israel is expanding its military offensive. This needs to stop now. Israel needs to change course now. As an elected member of the Security Council, Denmark actively pushes for solutions, urging for an immediate ceasefire, release of hostages, unhindered humanitarian access. Today, the two-state solution is challenged by the war in Gaza, by Israel's direct opposition, expanding of illegal settlements, and threats to annex Gaza and the West Bank. This is why I say today, the keys to recognition of the Palestinian state should no longer lie in the hands of the Israeli government. The Palestinians themselves must be able to fulfill the conditions for the creation of a viable Palestinian state. The key must be in their hands. The Palestinians must become masters of their own destiny. Therefore, Denmark stands ready to recognize Palestine as a state when certain conditions are met. The Israeli hostages are released, when Hamas are disarmed and no longer plays a role in Gaza, when there has been further progress on the PA's reform agenda, and when it is certain
and when there is certainty that a future Palestinian state will be demilitarized. In that spirit, we welcome the strong commitment by President Abbas regarding democratic reform and condemnation of Hamas, confirming that they can have no role in Gaza. Denmark has been at the forefront pushing for
The microphone has been cut off.
Your Excellency, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency, and I give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of the Netherlands.
Your Excellencies, today we unite as international community to voice our support for the two-state solution. Allow me to thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for providing this opportunity. We must bring an end to this continuous cycle of violence and suffering that Palestinians and Israelis have for long endured. We have both the ability and the obligation to provide hope and a future to those who seek peace and reconciliation. The horrendous war in Gaza must end now, and the worrying tide in the West Bank must be turned. With this in mind, we put our signature under the New York Declaration. And with this in mind, we have taken and will take steps to preserve the two-state solution and alleviate the immense suffering of the people of Gaza. A full course correction is needed, and the steps the Netherlands takes at the national and European level should force Israel to change its course. A legitimate and democratic Palestinian Authority with full control of the Palestinian territories is critical for achieving a viable Palestinian state. Hamas can have no role in future governance, must release all hostages and lay down its arms, and any future solution must guarantee the security of Israel, as we remain fully aware of the intention of Hamas and its likes. The Netherlands will recognize a Palestinian state at a later stage as part of a political process that should commence now. In the meanwhile, we actively contribute, for example, through hosting the Global Alliance or through the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee, and all of the areas identified in the annex of the New York Declaration currently count on Dutch support. We must continue to build on the outcomes of this conference and maintain momentum. An independent Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel.
The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Minister of State of Qatar.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, Your Excellencies, I would like to express my appreciation to His Excellency, the President of France and His Royal Highness of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their perception in convening this historic conference for the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian cause under the umbrella of the United Nations. This international movement comes in a very important context. First, a historic context of decades of injustice, occupying the territories of peoples who have been subjected under occupation, taking their land and living under complete destruction in Gaza. At the same time, the West Bank is subjected to reckless practices, annexing land, expanding settlement, and violating the holy sanctities. This is a dangerous threat to international peace and security and to the Middle East. This Israeli escalatory aggression came as a threat to so many countries in the region, including my country. Our capital, Doha, has been subjected to a treacherous Israeli aggression that violated its territorial integrity, led to the killing of 6 martyrs, and put the entire region to the brink of danger. This was a violation of international law and the UN Charter, and we believe that Israel is fully responsible for this rogue aggression, which was condemned by the Security Council and the United Nations. We have participated in the preparation of this conference to come up with a document that will be balanced to ensure the participation of all. Today, we must stress the establishment of a Palestinian statehood with sovereignty. The mic was cut off. Thank you, Your Excellency.
أشكر معاليكم على كلمتكم والآن أعطي الكلمة لمعالي وزير الدولة في الإمارات العربية المتحدة فليتفضل.
The Minister of State in the UAE.
الرئيس إيمانويل ماكرون
Your Excellency, President Emmanuel Macron,
أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة، يطيب لي في مستهل هذا البيان أن نتقدم بالشكر لكل من المملكة العربية السعودية والجمهورية الفرنسية على جهودهم الحثيثة في تنظيم هذا المؤتمر واعتماد إعلان نيويورك بأغلبية ساحقة بقرار من الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة وما يحويه من خارطة الطريق نحو تجسيد الدولة الفلسطينية المستقلة ذات السيادة تعيش بأمان وسلام إلى جانب دولة إسرائيل. كما نرحب بالاعترافات المتوالية بالدولة الفلسطينية وندعو الدول التي لم تعترف بالدولة الفلسطينية بعد القيام بذلك، وفي ظل التطورات الخطيرة التي يشهدها قطاع غزة إلى جانب التهديدات الإسرائيلية المتوالية بضم الضفة الغربية وغيرها من الانتهاكات الجسيمة والمرفوضة، فلا بد من مواصلة العمل على تحقيق وقف فوري ودائم لإطلاق النار والإفراج عن الرهائن والمحتجزين وإدخال المساعدات الإنسانية بشكل كامل وغير مشروط إلى كافة أنحاء القطاع، وندعم جهود الوساطة التي تقوم بها مصر ودولة قطر والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، ونجدد دعوة لمجلس الأمن لتحمل مسؤولياته القانونية والأخلاقية لردع إسرائيل ووقف الانتهاكات الإسرائيلية بالأراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة وتعديها في سائر المنطقة، محذرين مما تشكله من تداعيات بالغة الخطورة على الأمن والسلم الإقليمي والدولي. ولتحقيق السلام المستدام يجب خلق أفق سياسي واضح وخارطة طريق ملزمة للدولة الفلسطينية المستقلة وإصلاح وتمكين سلطة وطنية فلسطينية شرعية كفؤة تحصر السلاح بيدها وتلتزم بمكافحة التطرف والإرهاب. وفي الختام سيد الرئيس، دعونا نبني طريقا نحو السلام الدائم والعادل والشامل لتحقيق التطلعات التي تصبو إليها شعوب المنطقة. وشكرا.
شكرا معاليكم، وأعطي الكلمة الآن
Thank you, Your Excellency, and I give the floor to
the
Vice President of the Vice Prime Minister of Russia.
Уважаемые господа сопредседатели, дамы и господа,
Distinguished co-chairs, ladies and
происходящее на
gentlemen,
Ближнем Востоке
what's
произошло
happening
все
in the
мыслимые и
Middle
немыслимые
East
пределы.
has exceeded all thinkable
За
and
последние 3 года мы
unthinkable
стали
limits over the last 3
свидетелями
years.
очевидной
We've
террористической
seen
угрозы,
an uptick in the terrorist threat, aggressive attacks on sovereignty, and the territorial integrity of states, violations of the UN Charter, as well as attacks on sites under AEA safeguards before our very eyes. We have seen hunger, man-made hunger. We're seeing queues, people queuing for foodstuffs. 50,000 people, children have died, and many children are suffering from malnutrition. According to the OCHA representative, the city of Gaza has been handed down a death sentence. The Israeli leadership has announced it will be annexing a large portion of the West Bank, building up E1, that sector,
and thus doing a blow to the establishment of a continuous state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. Palestinians being subjected to unspeakable suffering, as well as having their hopes for a better future taken away from them. And this at a time when we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and the establishment of the UN. Many states promised the recognition of Palestine some time ago, and today they made good on that promise. They did this 80 years after the adoption of a key decision, Resolution 181 of the UNGA, with the partition plan of former Mandate Palestine into 2 states. I'd like to remind you that Russia, much like the overwhelming majority of the world's states, 149 states, long ago recognized the legitimate rights of Palestinians to return to their own state. And we did this without waiting for this current human tragedy. The speaker's microphone has been cut off.
I thank you, Your Excellency, for this statement, and I give the floor to His Excellency, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States.
السيد الرئيس
Your Excellency, we face an extraordinary moment by all standards and means, while the Israeli occupation is seeking now to bury the project of the Palestinian state on the streets of Gaza. We see the representatives of the overwhelming majority of the countries of the world and at highest levels to save this project. We are here today not to save the Palestinian state only, but to also save some of our common humanity. I would like to remind everyone that the State of Israel was established through a UN resolution, and the the states recognizing Israel had the biggest impact on the fact that it was established and given legitimacy. The UN resolutions stipulated the establishment of Palestinian state to be established alongside Israel, but this state did not see the light of day for several reasons. We have a duty, this important duty, to make this conference a major milestone on a path that is important and a road that is irreversible towards implementing the two-state solution. And for the states to recognize the Palestinian state today, they should also have the duty of protecting Palestinians against systematic killing and the Palestinians against punitive measures that undermine future opportunities and bring us backwards. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Your Excellency, for this statement. This would be our last speaker for this afternoon. The 5th plenary meeting is hereby resumed. I now invite my fellow co-chair
Mesdames et messieurs, je tenais à vous remercier, chefs d'État et de gouvernement, ministres des Affaires étrangères et représentants officiels, pour votre participation à cette conférence historique en marge de l'Assemblée générale des Nations Unies. Elle nous a permis de prendre acte des progrès significatifs réalisés depuis la conférence de juillet dernier. Et nous ne devons pas et nous n'allons pas nous arrêter là. Cet effort collectif indispensable doit se poursuivre dans les semaines à venir pour relever l'immense défi de transformer une réalité de guerre permanente of transforming a hopeless ongoing war into a reality of peace and security, which stands the test of time. Time is marching on, given the extremely grave nature of the situation and the collective suffering of civilians. The dynamic we've ushered in today must be followed by rigorous work on Palestine's tomorrow. Palestine's authority must be reformed. There must be the laying down of arms, Hamas excluded from government, and other things. If we move forward in this way, there will be able to be a sovereign, independent Palestine state alongside Israel, guaranteeing everyone's security. As we chart this course, our only adversaries are extremism and hatred. Let us give them no ground whatsoever. Ours is the duty to stop Israeli and Palestinians from getting bogged down in an infinite spiral of violence. As the President of the Republic said, time has come for peace. Thank you.
Allow me to make some concluding remarks. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its appreciation to all countries that have announced their recognition of the State of Palestine and its deep appreciation of President Mahmoud Abbas for his unwavering commitment to peace. These recognitions today are not symbolic but reflect a will and a responsibility in fulfilling the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and decisive action towards ending occupation and make the two-state solution a reality that is irreversible. Based on what we have witnessed today and this growing consensus, international consensus, we will continue to work with all our partners in order to end the Israeli aggression and ensure accountability, achieve sustainable peace and prosperity for Palestinians and all countries in the region. We also thank our partners, the Republic of France, for their constructive efforts and genuine efforts to support the peace of the path of peace. I therefore conclude and we come to the end of the conference for the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question and the implementation of the two-state solution. The meeting is adjourned.